Hello and welcome to Forge Debates. Yes, it's back and politics becomes the central concept of the SU once again. And what a night we have, starting with the development officer, ranging to the international students officer, to sport, and then to the president right at the end. A myriad of candidates all hoping to get that crucial role and change politics around the SU. And here in this Pundit studio, we will be discussing the views, opinions of the people who matter and talking about the policies that people across the SU will be wanting. How does that affect students across the SU and the university? And alongside me, Georgia Livingston and Jack Matlis. Guys, we are looking at development first. Harry Carling and Jordan Weir, two candidates who, both are on a sustainability issue. Both want to promote that recyclable aspect to the green side of politics as well. Two very, very similar issues, but will the policies be that different that you can actually differentiate with them?
Well, I think that's the big question that's going to be kind of asked tonight. At the moment, what we've got are kind of sets of policy ideas that have been expressed in kind of terms of sound bites on candidate videos. And what we're going to see tonight is those ideas really put to the test, and we'll see how well they hold up under pressure.
We're also going to see what's new, how it's going to change from last year's, any improvement, and whether it's actually what they're saying is realistic at all. Because a lot of the things on there are quite ambitious, and we want everything to happen, but are they realistic?
Both of them have touched on zero waste and looking at that recyclability aspect, making sure that when it comes down to products, that plastics are recycled, reused, and that just increases, that policy in terms of the environmental aspect. It's great in theory, but are they just, again, too similar?
Yeah, both candidates will be speaking about the expansion of the zero waste shop. So we want to see how they differ about doing that and what benefit it is to the actual students here.
Really, I think that's what tonight's all about, is giving them a platform to discuss their policies in depth, so we can see the difference between the two candidates that perhaps they've not had the chance to kind of express before.
I guess the question tonight, not just in development, but in all the other debates as well, will it actually make a difference, or have the campaign videos and the leaflets around the SU done that already?
I think it will. I think there's only so much you can do in a 50-second campaign video. There's only so much you can do in a very small leaflet. What we've got tonight is a full half an hour's worth of debate, so these policies can be interrogated, followed up with extra questions, so we can really see kind of under the skin of these policies.
Right, let's go into the debates then with Cameron, who is your host for the night. The first debate is development. Enjoy.
On Monday the 25th of February, we get a chance to vote in this year's SU officer elections. We'll be voting to elect 8 new SU officers, 2 new student trustees, and we get to vote in 2 referenda on student issues. 1 on whether to affiliate with the NUS, and 2 on whether to elect 2 new student councillors, 1 for sports clubs and 1 for societies. The students that we elect will represent us and our voice throughout the coming year. But with tens of candidates and only 8 officer positions, how do we know who to vote for? Tonight, Forge is hosting debates between the candidates for Development Officer, International Students Officer, Sports Officer and President. These SU officers will be responsible for representing the rights and welfare of international students. They'll be involved in organising one of the biggest events in the SU calendar in varsity. We'll spend the year focused on things such as sustainability projects and the future of our SU. And of course the President. Well, they'll spearhead our SU for the next year. Hello and welcome to the first night of the 2019 Forge SU election candidate debates. Today we've got the debates between the Development Officer, the candidates for International Students Officer, the candidates for Sports Officer, and we're ending with a candidate debate for President. So we're joined first and foremost by Jordan and by Harry, who are both running for Development Officer. I enjoyed the round table that you had yesterday. It's quite cosy. It's clear that you both agree on lots of things. Harry, why do you think that might be?
I believe that although our policies seem different on paper, they are all targeting and coming from the same place in terms of what we want to improve from a sustainability aspect.
Would you agree? You've agreed with a lot that Harry said so far.
Well, what a way to start, agreeing straight away. Absolutely, like Harry said, obviously we want to make an impact at this SU. We're running for this role on a positive note. We both want sustainability, but I think our policies do differ in a lot of ways, and that's why tonight is a great way to show that we're not just really good friends. Yeah.
So one of the ways that you both agree with each other is you both discuss an expansion of the zero waste shop. So Jordan, you want to encourage students to sell their unwanted goods in a thrift store, is how you've described it on your manifesto.
Very American.
Well, can you tell us a little bit about like how that might work?
Yeah, obviously. So my idea in this is I want to continue the fantastic work that previous officers have done, like Mel, on opening up a zero waste store. I believe that our university should bring ingenuity and be a pioneer for sustainable development, and in doing so, what I would like to do is open a thrift store, so that a semester-based thrift store, so that students can come in, and it would be by the students for the students sort of thing. There would be no like profit made for the SU. It would be a student-to-student based trade, where students can come in and sell their old unwanted course books, old unwanted clothes, and kitchen utensils. I was speaking to a few like first years, and obviously when they first came to Encliffe, like a lot of them don't know each other. So like it's like we're all going to bring like certain aspects, but you don't know what to bring like in terms of the kitchen. So obviously like 10 people come up with 10 sets of forks and knives. It's not the greatest thing in the world.
Our cupboards were bulging.
Yeah, exactly. So, but I think if we open it up in terms of a sort of semester-based thrift store where students can come in, sell these old unwanted goods, and we can reuse this, and it's more recycled goods instead of the student body going back to stores and keep on buying this sort of stuff. I want to stand to be more sustainable. So yeah.
You also identify, Harry, pots and pans as being a big source of, you said, unnecessary waste, but you focused more on graduating students. So again, the two of you agree on this being like a wasteful thing, but you've come up with a different way that this could be solved. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So as similar as you, it may have seemed at the round table yesterday, as Jordan says, his is a semester-based planned thing and actually doesn't link into the zero waste shop that we have. From what I'm gathering from what he wants from this thrift store, what I want is to actually give a different edge to our fantastic zero waste shop by selling a different range of products, which is recyclable pots, pans, and various kitchen utensils. Where I come from this standpoint is it will market this outlet further as it epitomizes zero waste. And as you say, targeting graduating students, I was talking to students on the concourse today about this idea, and I just asked them, you're graduating this year, what do you think will happen to your utensils? And one person straight out said to me, I'd throw them away. I said, okay, you wouldn't even bring them home? You wouldn't put them in your recycling bin? No, I'd put them into my just the normal waste. And for me, I see this as such an unnecessary waste stream in so many of the student areas around our uni that I want to intervene on it and recycle them through our university. I am fully aware that Encliffe have a scheme where at the end of each academic year people can give them to a drop-off zone. However, I want to bring this into our union and sell these, reuse and sell these pots, pans and utensils at a cheaper rate for our students, giving them a better range than what a lot of greedy supermarkets would sell them at. So it's benefiting students on the one hand. However, I believe it would financially improve that outlet and market it further.
Thank you. So on that, Harry picks up on a point with your policy to do with getting rid of utensils or reusing utensils. And that is that your plan for a thrift store, it would involve, correct me if I'm wrong, students selling their utensils, and they would take the money for that. And one thing that I had written about this policy is that could you explain the sort of the idea behind having that system, as opposed to where if the zero waste shop were to sell them, that money would then go back into the students and the SU?
Yeah, of course. Obviously, with the fact of opening it up into the zero waste store, it's a great idea, but I think the one fundamental problem is the amount of stuff getting brought into this place. It's not a big store, and we haven't got a huge space in the SU to do these things. That's why I'm saying, like, we could have it for 2 weeks in the Octagon, or even on the concourse, where students can come, have a table where they can sell their old unwanted goods, such as, pots and pans and stuff like that, and old clothes and old course books. I think that would be a better idea, because it's not congesting the store with this amount of goods coming in from loads of students. I do agree with it, but I just think there's a better way to tackle this. And the reason why I want to give it to the student body to do is I want them to be able to like interact and sort of like socialise with other people as well. I think it gives a good platform for that, as well as we're not just using the market as a like reselling point, if you know what I mean. I'd rather the students did that, and it gave their platform for that. So that's why I want to do that instead of putting into the zero waste store. I think a zero waste store is fantastic, and it really does what it says on the tin basically. But I do believe that if we had 2 weeks, be that on the concourse, in the SU, in the Octagon, even in Endcliffe when people arrive on the first year, I think that would be a great opportunity for people to instantly meet each other, greet each other, become friends, trade clothes, trade pots and pans. So
of course you
can. I really like that idea as well. I like the linking it into the social aspects as well. Coming to uni, we're all new and things. In defence of my manifesto point is, I am fully aware it's nowhere near the biggest outlet that we have in the union. There is an unlimited amount of space, but through tackling this problem, if we had over excess amount of stock or things donated, I have spoken to a external zero waste shop called Unwrapped, which is on Crooks Road, and discussed this idea with them, whether they'd be interested in collaborating with the Students' Union on this if we had excess, and they did seem interested in it. So this would, for me, would also benefit the union in developing external relationships with a local business and a local zero waste shop, which is something that I'm extremely passionate about, is broadening the range. And finally, the expansion to this point would be similar to Jordan's, but through collaborating with our halls of residence. If we had over excess stock, I'd love to offer new students coming into Endcliffe, Ranmore, Allen Court, whether they would be interested in paying extra for having recycled utensils in their flats when they move into halls. And I think this is, for me, I'm passionate about this idea because it will, again, save our students coming to university. It is not a cheap process when you're moving to university at all, having to buy all these utensils. As you mentioned before, clustered cupboards from everyone having to buy these new utensils from like supermarkets and things, and it's not cheap at all. So I think if you offer them an added fee on that, you'd say to them there is an option to have recycled utensils in your flats when you move in. It would save the lugging of all the utensils up in your car as well on the way to uni. So that's another way I would go about having excess stock with this idea.
What are your thoughts on Harry's remedy to the potential like overcrowding of the zero waste shops, go to an external business?
I do agree with the external business in itself providing the means to be sustainable, the idea of like reusing and recycling stuff. But I think doing it externally is great, and like if we had an overstock. But I believe that I don't honestly believe that we should take it away from the Students' Union. I think it should be based here. I think we should do it here, and if there is an overstock, yeah, I do agree with Harry on that point. Yeah, we take it to external sites where it can be reused, but I think it should be a student-led sort of semester-based sort of weekly sort of thing where people can come in and do this and sell these goods. I think it should be student-owned, this, and obviously we would have a say in regulating that and giving them the platform for that, but I honestly don't think taking it away to local business is the correct answer to what we need to be doing.
We could talk about the Zero Waste Shop all night. I think the three of us agree that it's a great outlet and it's something that the SU should certainly have, and we value it. Both of you in your manifestos have touched on plastics, which is a big one at the moment, with the straws and the SU not selling single-use plastic bottles of water. However, more of a general sort of sustainability question. Do you guys think that there can be sometimes an issue with policies on sustainability and which promote sustainability, as sometimes they can appear like slightly inconvenient to people, to like the consumer? Like lots of people might find it inconvenient that, for example, the SU shop doesn't stock water, and I know sometimes I've forgotten my plastic bottle, which I actually kicked over, but it's there, and we're all very conscious. How do you sort of respond to the idea that, you know, it could be difficult to sort of put the policies forward which people might find inconvenient?
Yeah, I totally understand, like, there is an inconvenience factor when taking away like bottled water and stuff like that, but I think the true essence of why there's a lot of people angry at this is probably going back to one of my policy points, where I feel as though across the university campus there is not enough water fountains for students to come in and have water. So if you have got a bottle of water or a reusable bottle, sometimes people are left thinking, where's the nearest fountain? And I think that is a key area we need to expand on. If we're going to make a policy where we get rid of plastic bottled waters and then don't have the backbone to what we need to do to reassure the students are using that and abiding sort of by that, I feel like we need to like increase the amount of water fountains. So for example, I'm part of the politics student staff committee. So in this committee, obviously students come to us and we raise issues to the department and the staff there. A student came up to us and stated that in the politics department in Elmfield that there was not a water fountain that was good enough to like fill a bottle of water. So so instead we took that forward. We took a petition forward to staff and the faculty, and it was successful. We were successful, and basically they're now in the process of making this new water fountain in the department. So what I want to do is if I am your SU development officer and if I do get your vote, I will be increasing the amount of water fountains across the SU to ensure that that's best practice.
Yeah. So, in terms of your original question, I think I understand from a student standpoint there may be annoyances. However, we have been the best SU for the last 10 years, and if we want to continue staying at the top, I believe we need to sort of practice policies that we preach and be ahead of the game in terms of sustainability from a sustainability standpoint. So in terms of the lack of like bottled waters in the shop, I wouldn't choose for that to change at all, because I think we need to be practicing sustainable approaches. And I think what's positive between mine and Jordan's manifestos is your next SU development officer does care massively, whoever you choose does completely care massively on the continuous global problem which is plastics and plastic packaging. In terms of the water fountain point, I think yeah, fair enough. I like where it's coming from a plastic standpoint. For me personally, I've never seen it as a problem because I know where they are around campus. I'm in Western Bank, my favourite library. I have to walk down 2 flights of stairs to the water fountain. I don't see that as a massive issue. I know where it is in the union and things. I think it is a good idea, but I don't see it as crucial personally.
You have identified a plastic potential issue, and this is to do with the single-use containers that New Leaf use. Obviously, New Leaf has joined the reusable revolution, so to speak, and you can get a salad in a reusable box, which gives you like a free salad token for the first time, and then it's cheaper from then on. You want to make the single-use boxes in New Leaf cardboard. Could you tell us a little bit logistically, like how that might work?
In terms of working with the owner of New Leaf, the sort of shop manager, I do everything in my power to change these materials round, because, as I say, from a sustainability standpoint, in the SU, I think we do need to be reducing our plastic consumption for consumers as well. I think what New Leaf have done in the past year in implementing the reusable containers and being rewarded for that, I think is fantastic, and it's a fantastic incentive for students to be acting more sustainably. But yeah, in terms of the students that don't remember their reusable containers, I think that if they're offered an opportunity to be eating their lunch out of something that is more biodegradable and more sustainably responsible, I think that speaks volumes for ISU if that can be implemented.
So a question that I have about this is that cardboard wood obviously is more biodegradable than plastic. However, if you were to have a salad in it, I particularly am fond of the mango chili and lime dressing from New Leaf and like a lot of it. So if that were to get soggy, for example, to throw that away in a sustainable or environmentally conscious way, it would need to be composted. What are the sort of facilities for that in the SU as regards like the disposal of food waste? Because it would probably have to go in the food waste bin, right?
Yeah.
Deadpan, yes.
Yeah, this sort of brings back to how we have developed in the past years with the implementation of these food waste bins. I imagine they would have to go into these, and
because the issue is that if it goes into the regular recycling food waste, like the coffee cups, the single-use coffee cups, the issue with those is that the coffee actually contaminates the recycling.
Mm-hmm.
And what's strange about that is that coffee grounds are quite good for soil. So actually, if you throw away coffee grounds, that's good for the soil. But if you throw away coffee cups, it actually contaminates the recycling. So they have to be disposed in a more conscious way. I'm just interested about that policy simply because, it's how far would you sort of take it in terms of being able to?
I do think, regardless of that issue in terms of having too much mango and
chili and lime.
Yeah.
Have you not tried it?
I haven't.
It's
no.
very good.
I usually go for sweet chili, but
not bad.
Yeah.
I'll have to give it a try.
Sorry?
I'll have to give it a try.
Yeah, please do. What's your, just in the interest of impartiality, what is your dressing of choice at the New Leaf?
I'd say sweet chili as well. I'm
outnumbered.
I like spicy stuff.
Another thing we agree on. In terms of back to your question, a very good question.
Thank you.
I do think, regardless of that being an issue, I think changing the materials is doing more good than bad. I think if you're doing a cost-benefit analysis, I would still be absolutely for changing to cardboard.
Any response? I understand we talked about New Leaf dressings for quite a while there. The original question that I put to Harry was about actually going about disposing of the cardboard packaging for New Leaf, and how we'd go about that.
Yeah, I think it's a wonderful idea. Obviously, changing the packaging, plastic's obviously a huge deal, and obviously we need to reduce the plastic waste, not just here in this SU, but globally. But I think by taking plastic and then using cardboard, like you said, it can cause problems as well. So I think instead of doing that, I feel like maybe if we gave the students sort of discounts for like if they bring their own Tupperware or stuff like that, and potentially students will do that if they're given the incentive to do so. Say if there's like, I don't know, 10% off or 20% off your lunch, your sweet chili. And
sweet chili is pretty good.
Yeah.
That of course does happen in New Leaf currently.
Right, yes. But what I'm saying is, I think we need to make more of a deal of it.
Okay.
I think we need to expand the knowledge on it. I feel like not a lot of students would know about that, and I think changing it to cardboard, it's got its benefits, but it's got its negatives. So we need to intensively look and research the best way to go about that and see if there's any alternatives instead. But yeah, it's a good policy. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay, so moving on from New Leaf, you both want to reward sustainability. Surprise, surprise from a development officer, but you want to go about it slightly differently. So, Harry, you want to introduce loyalty schemes for the outlets in the SU, which promote sustainability. How would you sort of judge whether or not outlets sort of adequately promote sustainability in order to introduce these kind of loyalty schemes?
So the two outlets that I have selected for these loyalty schemes in my manifesto are New Leaf and the Zero Waste Shop. Two outlets that I absolutely love, but from a sustainability standpoint for different reasons. New Leaf obviously encourages, as well as it does sell meats, but it encourages more vegetarian or vegan alternatives. And so much in the press recently has just been revealed how us as humans and how we can reduce our meat intake has the biggest impact that we can from a green standpoint. And I believe that if we're sort of promoting this to our students and how they can, as consumers can and with their purchasing habits can act more sustainably and more like ethically conscious, I do think that our students deserve to be rewarded for this. Linking into New Leaf, I think you could criticise this point, saying, is that not going to be losing New Leaf a bit of business with for example?
Have you been reading my cards? No, that's fine.
Is that
that is something that I was.
I mean, it's obviously something I've considered. For example, a loyalty scheme for New Leaf. Your 10th salad that you buy, or 10th product you buy from New Leaf, you get for free. I believe the incentive of these loyalty schemes, I think Coffee Revs proves it, global companies prove it, that I'm just very for loyalty schemes if it is for a good cause, because it gives students the incentive to keep coming back and reusing that outlet's produce. I honestly wasn't reading that card. But
it wasn't supposed to sound quite as accusatory as it did.
Yeah, obviously that is something to take into consideration. You think, would New Leaf be losing money from adding that? I think they'd be gaining money. I think they'd be gaining business from a marketing standpoint. And obviously the Zero Waste Shop, I think the more our students are encouraged to use that and keep going back, I think the better it is.
More sort of trying to keep business in the SU.
Absolutely. Because there is obviously so many fantastic external companies around our SU, for example, like Falafel King, and if we can convince our students to use New Leaf over Falafel King, for example, generating more income for our students union, I think all the better.
And how would you respond to the idea of like rewarding the outlets? Because you touched on societies and sports clubs for promoting sustainability. So how would you respond to the idea of doing that with the outlets? And then, to not throw too many questions at you all at once, but how would you judge whether or not societies and sports clubs have sort of acted in a sustainable enough way?
So obviously the membership idea is fantastic. That would be a great idea. It keeps a flow of sort of money coming into the SU, so the SU can keep on growing and expanding and making it even better than what it already is as the top SU in the country. I totally agree with that. I think my only concern is, if I could quickly ask Harry, how would you go about making a loyalty card for a store like a zero waste store? How would that work?
Yeah,
I'm
very
sorry,
good question.
Taking over your job, sorry. But
No,
yeah,
very-
just
Please, by
quickly.
all means, debate.
Yeah.
No, very good question. I think the way the zero waste store currently runs, it's sold on weights and how much you buy per sale. And I think working with the store manager, I'd have to sort out a way that constitutes to basically a stamp per every time you use it. I think you'd need to buy a certain amount of produce from the zero waste store to be allocated. So if you're buying one spice every time you go, I don't think that constitutes you're not using and utilising that store enough and embracing zero waste. So I don't think you should be rewarded. However, I would work with the manager of that store to implement a scheme where we think you're definitely buying enough each time, so you get a stamp, basically.
Absolutely, yeah. Okay, fair enough. So I like that idea, and I think if it was me, obviously my policies don't cover exactly a loyalty card sort of system like we've touched upon, but I do think that the loyalty card's a fantastic idea, and obviously the policies that I'm running on are not the sole policies that I will just be going for. I do want to work with everybody across the SU to ensure that our SU is the pioneer for sustainable development. So yeah, stuff like that with Harry's idea. Obviously we would work very hard for that, and I would just branch it out to all outlets. I would find a way to branch it to all outlets, so we're really pushing sort of a sustainable nature and business idea in the SU. So obviously going on to my policy with incentivizing sports societies, committees, etc., in rewarding them for sustainable and greener impacts in the community and in the SU and university-wide. Obviously, I would create a sort of a Facebook page or a Twitter page where if a sports society goes out, they can post on the page, and if they show a fantastic way of doing something different, say if they're going to a Bucks game and they're using a more greener transport link, or they're going on litter picks and stuff like that around the campus, anything like that, and they can sort of document it and sort of have a sort of evidence of doing it. I would incentivize that, be that from maybe giving them raw tickets, Pop-Tarts tickets, providing them with all sort of rewards, stuff like that.
Similar to how SOTCOM Society
Yeah,
Connect, I
yeah,
think,
stuff like
works.
that. I would sort of make sure that the students were rewarded for it. And I think if we do that, I think it will bring more students together and doing the same sort of thing, and it would sort of revitalise the sort of idea of being a sustainable SU. And yeah, it would generally improve the sort of education value of becoming more sustainable as a university as well, if we can branch it out on a social level as well and make sure that all of our friends are doing the sort of same thing as you're wanting to do in terms of green impact. So yeah.
Is it more about trying to encourage sports clubs and societies for going sort of outside of the remit of their society, or is it more about societies looking at their current practices and trying to make those greener?
I would say both. I would say that if they can obviously improve on what they're already doing and becoming more sustainable, then yeah, fantastic. That would be a great improvement from maybe something that was not greatly sustainable. Maybe I've heard a few people in different sports societies when they're going to Bucks games using different cars and stuff like that, and they're all traveling separately. I feel like if everybody travels together, obviously the amount of gas and fossil fuels are not used. So stuff like that, it's just the little things, the little impacts that make a bigger impact on a global scale. Obviously, I do a lot of research as part of a lobbyist for a climate change group in Sheffield, and like I have a lot of knowledge in that area. So even if it's just the littlest thing, it expands the sort of sustainable nature of our society, not just in this SU but across the nation.
Sorry, very quickly, if you could grab in just before we wrap up, because we're running out of time.
So I do really like that scheme, and I love just sort of rewarding students for acting responsibly. And Jordan's come up with this idea, like obviously firsthand from being in a sports team. From my experience, just adding to that, from my experience in societies, I've been in theatre societies where we have to sell shows, and doing that, we're flyering on the concourse, flyering in the city, and every time I see it that we are printing far too many flyers needed and so many are wasted. It's just so much wasted material that I think it could you could also add into that in terms of a society aspect. I've never been talented enough to be in a sports team, unfortunately, but yeah, that's from my experience, and I think if either of us were to get the role, I think working with the activities officer on this and working closer with societies in how they can just act greener in their material use as well as their fossil fuels and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, sorry.
So apologies, guys, but we are going to have to wrap up because we will yak far too long about New Leaf dressings. So that is the end of the candidates debate for SU Development Officer. We'll be up next with International Students Officer, but if you want to keep up with the campaign for Development Officer, you can do through Forge Press's live blog on forgetoday.com/elections and check out how both Jordan and Harry are campaigning. We're going to throw over now for some punditry in the current officer's office. Cheers.
Cheers, Cameron. Right, guys, the first debate there, Development Officer candidates. What do we make of it?
Well, firstly, I want to talk about, obviously, reduction of plastics was a widely talked about topic from the both of them, to be honest. And just want to touch upon the reduction of like swapping single-use plastics for cardboards. And obviously, it is an epidemic, but in New Leaf is using cardboard really the best way for people to live their food, because most people think it's a bit inconvenient, it's a bit soggy. Would you personally want to eat your food out of a cardboard box? I don't know.
I mean, frankly, it's a compromise that I'm willing to make, right? If I'm eating out of a cardboard box rather than eating out of plastic, which is going to then go into the ocean and harm wildlife. You know, yeah, cardboard gets a bit soggy sometimes, but, you know, it's not the end of the day. You can always put a napkin under what you're eating. So I think the case for cardboard, you know, is pretty strong.
Yeah.
Moving on quickly to, well, firstly, what Harry was on about digital U-cards. Now, we already know this is happening through academic rep meetings. Even if, you know, this succeeds and Harry is the one who, you know, puts that over the finishing line, will that have any originality to it?
I don't really think it matters that it's original. I think, you know, Harry's lending his support to the project of digital U-cards, and I think that's, you know, fundamentally a good thing. Whether it's an idea that's come from him in the first place or not is kind of less relevant than his support to the cause.
I think it's more of the awareness, because I don't think actually everyone's aware that there are digital U-cards being like in production or anything like that. I don't think people know about it. So regardless of whether it's original or done before, it doesn't really matter. I think to implement it is still a good policy if that's what he plans to do.
Now, Jordan wants to increase the amount of water fountains around the SU. Now, in the break, Georgia, you said you'd love the idea, and then Jack, you said you wouldn't be wholly for it. A bit of division here. Can you explain about that?
Sure. Well, personally, I'm not convinced. I am a history student, I should point out, so I do spend most of my time in the Information Commons or the Diamond. But there's water fountains on every floor. On some floors, there's more than one water fountain. I've never had to queue for a water fountain. Frankly, I don't see why we need any more. I think people just need to know where the current ones are.
I completely disagree. Having been in like most buildings around Student Union, Diamond, there are, I mean, albeit there are water fountains, I don't think there are actually enough. And I think the water fountains around campus do encourage people to bring in their own bottles, reusable, rather than going out and buying drinks when not necessary. And especially the fact that you said that you haven't had to queue a water fountain baffles me, because literally every time I've been to the Diamond, I've always had to wait for water.
maybe I'm just in the know. Maybe I know where water fountains are. I know secret locations. I know where to go. Hence I've never had to queue. I think it's an issue of advertising where they are more clearly.
I do agree with that. I feel like if there are water fountains around, definitely not everyone knows where they are, because I only know the ones around, well, the one here in the Student Union and the ones in the Diamond, to be fair.
Because I guess it's the issue of water fountains, but the issue of water itself, and the idea that plastic bottles with still water have been banned in the SU since 2011, I think. And I guess the question is, should there be water fountains in the first place if we were to bring back plastic bottles with still water? But would it be wise for a development officer candidate to go into a debate with the policy, about this, since it has been banned for 8 years?
I think it would be extremely unwise for them to want the reintroduction of plastic water bottles. But I think both of them are making fair points. Plastic's a big issue kind of nationally at the moment, and I can see why they're tapping into that. And there's a good case for more water fountains. There's a good case for advertising about the current water fountains. So, as a development officer and as water fountains being kind of part and parcel of the SU, I think it's completely relevant that they do talk about water and water fountains. Yeah.
I guess moving on to Jordan's policy of incentivizing rewards for societies who show a conscious effort to implement and become sustainable. There you go. Now, he mentioned in the debate about sports clubs and offering, let's say, raw tickets, for example, if they were to have greener transport to, let's say, Norton, Hallam Sports Park or Goodwin. Would that work? Because I'm just thinking logistically wise, tracking every single society in the way they do that could be quite difficult.
I was thinking, as a one-person sort of job, there are over 300 societies that we have, and tracking every single one to see how sustainable they are it would be quite a difficult task. And without having a breakdown as to exactly how you would go about doing that, I think it is. Although it seems like a really good idea and I'd get behind it, I feel like it is very difficult to implement right now.
I think difficult but not impossible is probably the watchword here. It's going to take some work, it's going to take some planning, but that's what the development officer is here for, is to devote all of their kind of working day to projects like this. So it's certainly something that with a little bit of planning could come about.
Another thing that Jordan mentioned was opening a reusable thrift shop. Now, we talked about Harry having the digital U-car policy earlier, and the fact that that's already in implementation. Now, Mel Key, the current SU development officer, is actually planning for this thrift shop. So again, even if he would succeed, I'll ask the same question: would it be original?
And again, I'm not sure it matters. He can lend his support to the idea of this thrift shop, and Melky can begin the implementation, and maybe he'll finish it off. Who knows? But
I guess the question is, should it be one of his main policies if it's already potentially likely at this minute?
Sure. And it's also a question of whether he's come up with this policy unaware that Melky's gonna implement one anyway, or whether it's something that he's stolen from Melky. Now, I don't know, but
we don't know.
Either way,
we don't know.
Either way, lending support, which is what he appears to be doing to an idea like that, has only got to be a good thing.
Both of them touched on the zero waste shop. Now, I think Harry wants to make it external, and Jordan wants to make it internal. What are both of your views about that? Because it's a policy discussion which will be not going on just now, but will be months and months in advance as well.
So with Harry's view, I think he spoke about new students coming to the uni, and when they move in, having recycled pots and pans that they'd be able to pay for, which I do think in some sense that is quite smart, is a decent idea. But then is it really making it more affordable? Because when you get to uni, they do have that sort of open day where you can pick out bits and bobs for free. So paying for it before you even get into your dorm, although it'd be an option, is it actually better than not paying for it at all? That's my question.
I think the debate over this kind of utensils outlet it went on for quite a long time, but what it actually showed for me was the level of consensus between the two candidates. Both of them fought fundamentally that having one of these outlets would be a good idea. There was just a disagreement over the kind of technicalities of whether it was run as a business or as kind of an arm of the SU. So really for me it showed the level of consensus there between them.
And finally, before we move on, if you had to pick a winner?
I'm going to go with Jordan on this one.
And in the spirit of Forge's impartiality, I will go with Harry.
Cheers, guys. Great. Right, back to Cameron for the International Students Officer debate. This should be a cracker, guys. Enjoy.
Thanks, Tim. So we're here joined by our candidates for International Students Officer. How is everyone? Is everyone good?
Good.
Everyone's good. So everybody's manifesto touches in one way or another on the idea of integration and inclusivity. How might you go about doing this? Should we start with you?
Hi everyone, my name is Chino and obviously I'm running to be International Student Officer. I intend to promote integration by promoting social mixers with speed dating, which will require students to speak to a minimum number of people within a given time. And by doing that, it would promote better relationships and definitely help international students and home students to make friends faster and not be lonely while they're here at the university.
Thank you. And yourself?
Hi guys, I'm Cici from China. For integration, I would like to say, because all the Chinese, they don't have Facebook, so they don't know what activities is holding now. So I would like to build a platform for the Chinese or some like Korean guys, if you use the app called Line or KakaoTalk, for every different nation, I think they have their own the social media. So I think we need to connect all the social media together to let them know more about the activity, what is going on in student union. They are don't want to join the activity. They just don't know where can they get the information. So that's why I'm here.
So that's actually something that I noticed when I came to university, and I'm only from Birmingham, so it's not that culturally different to the UK. But I didn't come to to university with Facebook, and I was surprised by just how much things were organised on Facebook. Do you think that might be an issue in terms of integration? Is actually just where the information is?
I definitely think this is a problem, and we, as Cici said, we should have a platform that allows people to connect with each other. But I think that should be an SU sort of things, and that we can work on all together. Yeah.
And what other ideas do you have in terms of sort of promoting integration and
inclusivity? So to promote integration and inclusivity, I would work with the sports and activities officer so that we could boost international students membership in clubs and society, because I think most of the time socials and all that are not catered for international students, because a lot of our culture, the culture here is to go for pint and pubs and all that, and it's not something that is inclusive of everyone. So I definitely would work on that.
Going down the line.
Hello, hi, I'm Rana from Jordan. The integration is such a big thing, and it's one of the biggest issues with the international communities, because with the international community is one thing, and then there's the wider community and is another thing. Integration is just making all of this unified, making it one community. And by doing this, we can tackle it, as you said previously, as Cici mentioned, promoting it on social media, on Facebook, because nowadays social media is a big part of everyone's lives. So we need to reach people through that. And also, my manifesto covers integration in all of the points, in terms of celebrating racial diversity, in terms of creating the mentoring system that helps newly arrivals fully integrate into the Sheffield University community. And also the first one by Brexit, by offering the students emotional support, and by also showing everyone what a taste of the world, of going around the world, by having all the wider community as one, as a whole, unified.
And finally.
Hi, I'm Rui Wei. I'm from China, and I think to integrate the international student to the local people, and we can organize more events, and such as the food festival. You know, everyone like eat food, and when they eat food, just like Chinese, they like eat dumplings during the Spring Festival. When they eat dumplings, they will feel they like home. So they can help. It can help them to find a sense of belonging to here. And from the different country students, they can also to eat the dumpling and to enjoy the Chinese culture or other countries' culture. And I hope in the future, every student from every national, from different national will get equally treated. Such as I know we have the Japan Day and we can have the China Day or Korean Day or other day. Every nation can have a day, and their student from the country, they can feel, this day is belonging to our country, and this is a special day for us. And I think we can organize some outline activities, such as we just set up a wall, and the wall is a confession wall. When you love someone, you can just write down this, and maybe you can find your your lover here. Yeah.
So a couple of things have been touched upon sort of down the line as we've gone. So about celebrating cultural holidays and that kind of thing. There are so many excellent societies, cultural societies here at the University of Sheffield who do some brilliant work, and obviously International Students Committee also do some absolutely brilliant work. Lots of the societies do put on celebrations for international holidays and various other sort of calendar events. Where do you sort of see the role of the International Students Officer in that? Like, how do you think that the International Students Officer can be involved in the promotion and celebration of different cultures' holidays? Should we start with Cece?
Yeah, I would like to say, although our international student officer, Rex, she did well, and I think it can be even better. And we can organize some like regular events for the international students, not only for their traditional festival, and it can be once a week or 2 or 3 times per month, and put them together in maybe in different room. Like I think the mocktail which Rex organized is really good, and I make a lot of my international students there. And so we need to find the common point of different nations and mix them together to make them get connected more fluently. And so I think we can do more better next year, maybe.
Tono?
Part of the roles of the international student officer is representing the students and knowing what they want and their ideas. So I believe that the role the international student officer can play in these events will be communicating with the students to find out what events they might want to see at the SU or to see celebrated, and this can be implemented with the use of a suggestion box, or it could even still be maintaining the current practice of having office hours. I thought about the suggestion box. I even scouted around and I saw a perfect position behind the photo booths where it can be placed, because some international students do not really speak fluent English, or they're not very confident. Sometimes when you talk to some people, they might be like, or I don't understand. But most times when I get there, I know that they don't really understand me, but they just want me to keep talking. So people who are like that, it doesn't mean that they're dumb. They're actually smart. It's just maybe they can't communicate as well. So if there's a suggestion box where they can put in their ideas without having to sell it to someone on the spot, I believe we will have new perspective, fresh ideas, and it will definitely enrich our international lives. Because even in my manifesto, I say we're all international students. So we all have something which we bring and which we share with one another. So regardless of whether you're a home student or you're an EU soon-to-be international student, or you're a proper international student, we all have something to us that makes us international, and as such, we all have different ideas to share. Thank you.
Yeah, so like what was the nice thing that China just pointed out was that it could be an idea for the international students officer to sort of lead those consultations on what sort of events that international students might like to see celebrated. How would you respond to that idea?
So the role of the international officer is basically the mediator between the Students' Union and the international students, and making sure that the bridge between the international students and the wider community, the gap is bridged, sorry. So there are a lot of cultural events already that the many cultural societies have every year. Like, for example, next week we're having a Mardi Gras celebration, and being a part of the International Students Committee has really showed me the amount of societies that are already here and want their voice to be heard. It is a matter of promoting it and a matter of spreading the message and making sure that everyone is aware of the amount of cultures that we had, the amount of times you can go around the world in one place.
So I agree with a lot of things that you said, and I think the role of the International Students Officer is also to liaise with departmental departments in the university. So I think to promote events, you should go to departments and actually talk to students so that we can increase the number of people that are aware of the events that are taking place, and also that they actually show up. So it's not just the student union, but it's also going to classes and just being, oh, something is happening and you can celebrate it, and just trying to have even more people coming and celebrating all the diversity that we have here.
Thank you. So yes, please go ahead.
Oh, it's a point that was raised in the first question, and we were all talking about promoting on different forms of social media and all that. Yeah, we're all on social media, but most times we see all these activities and we just stick interested or going, but we do not end up going to it. But when I believe that one way of promoting events will be through creating awareness in a way that students will be interested in seeing it. And I have an example, which is a personal experience. During my intro week, the orientation week, the K-pop society, they had this dance performance out in front of the Octagon Center, and it was brilliant. It was fun, and students gathered around and were watching, and everyone was interested. After that, I was intrigued, and I went to ask, how can I join? And I joined, and I wasn't the only one who joined. A couple of my friends joined as well, and I do not regret that. But that's because they were accessible, and it looked fun. Yeah, we're here to study and create a brighter future, but we also want to have a good time. We want to have fun. So I believe one way of doing that is to approach the presidents of societies, the activities officer, and have them look for fun ways to create to raise awareness in a spontaneous manner. I know we had the activities fair not too long ago, but that was just fixed. I really didn't attend that, and I'm sure several people who had lectures which clashed didn't attend that. So we can just have spontaneous events like that, which would make students know that they'll have fun, and that will create awareness. Thank you, and I'm sorry for interjecting.
No, please do. Like, that's the point of this, is that like we can all have a good discussion. How that's like an interesting point there that's been raised about the International Students Officer working closely with the societies, and obviously we've got like anecdotal experience that having the more interesting ways of like marketing these events is effective. Do you feel that if you were elected as International Students Officer that you would work with the societies that already exist to really like push and get international students involved in events in the SU?
Yeah, I think the international student officer, the rule is they are the voice of the students and the hand of the student union, because they need to listen what the student really want For example, we all know international students always pay a lot, and maybe sometimes our fee is double than other EU students, and maybe sometimes we can help them to save money or to apply for other kind of the scholarships, and maybe we can help them to find some part-time job. The part-time job is not only to make money, but also to help them to increase their professional experience, and this can increase their competitive to find the new job. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I had something to say about activities being fun and encouraging international students to join societies. So yes, we need to have fun, but it's not very, when we think about fun, we don't really think of postgrad students or major students that maybe don't think, oh, you know, like K-pop society, I'm sure they're a lot of fun, but if I was 30 years old student, I probably wouldn't join, and I think that's something that we need to work on, also like including major students, but also we have a lot of events, and I think that's great, but we don't really think about what's happening after the event, because there's such a big pressure of going to places, making new friends, especially as an international student, you'll have such a pressure to make friends, and then you go home and you kind of realize, well, I'm on my own, and that's when I think mental health is so important as well to take care of and to think of when we think about events, activities and societies.
So you've touched on like a lot of really big issues there, and obviously as with all of the SU officer roles, there are some really big issues to tackle. Just previously we were talking to our development officer candidates about sustainability, and obviously a big issue which we can't go without talking about is Brexit. So lots of international students officer candidates have mentioned Brexit. How do you feel that you'll support our current international students through Brexit? We'll go down the line.
Okay, I do want to interject again. Okay, so we all know Brexit is, at first it was a trending topic, but it seems like it's here to stay because it's been going on over the years, and at no point in time have we actually really had definitive information. This morning I checked the news. I check the news almost every day because I'm an international student and it concerns me. So I checked this morning and I saw something about the lights might go off. Then on reading further, I realized that it just means that since the UK gets about 6% of power from European countries, then it means that the cost of power will go up. And then I checked a while ago and it says Erasmus is affected. So there's so many other things. Yesterday I checked and it said something about UK nationals needing to pay £52 for a visa to visit Europe, which isn't done right now. So there's so many things which could happen in the case of a no-deal exit from Europe. And as such, I believe the only thing which an international student officer can do is to provide information to the students, up-to-date information, current information about everything that has to do with Brexit and education. And I intend to do that by putting up daily updates or weekly updates if it slows down of any news relating to Brexit and education. I was thinking of it's going up on the student websites, but I really do not know much about the IT department. But if it can't go up there, we have so many information boards in the SU, and it can just be a fun thing to maybe have postcards or post-it notes with information to keep students informed, because even the EU students now are at an uncertain position. They do not know if they're going to be international students soon, and they're going to be forced to apply for visas and, you know, to pay international school fees, which is not fun, I tell you, because we pay a whole lot of money. So my point is I'm definitely going to have to provide them with information. That's the best that I can do as an international student officer. Thank you.
UCC?
Yeah, talking about the Brexit, I think that every person have their own opinions, and I would like to collect all the students' opinions, and everyone have their right to make their voice to get hear from everybody. So we need to talk to all the people what I'm thinking about. And I think like for our overseas students, we paid even double, even treble tuition fees than the home university. And that's what I mentioned in my manifesto. I'm trying to think out more scholarship, sponsorship of the scholar opportunities for the international students. Because like when I applied for the University of Sheffield, my undergraduate transcript, I got 91%. But even though I still cannot get any the scholarship. I think I did well in my undergraduate, but so what? I didn't get any scholarship here. So I think if we can find more scholarship for the brilliant students, we can get more good resource from all over the world, and all the students, the brilliant students, they are the power and the results for all the university. So we need to get benefit for all the international students and encourage them to apply for our Sheffield. That's what we need to get a better reputation, maybe.
So I think there are two things that we can do. So first of all is giving emotional support to all of the students that feel that they have been rejected, like I do, because I'm a French national. So by emotional support, I'm thinking, obviously, the current international students officer, Rex, has office hours. I feel like we should have something dedicated to Brexit, just an hour, so that people can come, talk, and say what they think, and and then we can feedback that and try to work on it. And second, I would change the SU website because it's not fit for purpose. When you try to find information on Brexit on it, it's very confusing. There's a lot on it, and I think we could change that with infographics and just make it more accessible to people, because that's not really clear at the moment. So that's. Yeah.
Do you think that the SU website should hold information such as this? I often see the SU website as a sort of hub for people who are involved in societies and that kind of thing. Do you feel that it should then have like a more news-based sort of purpose?
Definitely. I think it should be more about news and everything that concerns students, really, because the Students' Union is all about you and us. So obviously we should have something that is related to the news, because this is what is going to impact what we're doing at the moment. So definitely more news-based.
And would you agree that perhaps like information is key, and just making sure that students, international students, know what to expect?
Definitely. Information is key, but the main thing about Brexit as of this moment is that we don't know much, so there's a lot of uncertainty. So by the end of March, we'll have more information about what it means for international students, for European Union students, for Erasmus students, for year abroad students. And once we figured out what that means for them, we can actually set a solid plan. But I also aim to introduce a concern wall about where anyone can put forth their concern about following Brexit before the end of term, so that there's more time to work on it and a chance to hear everyone's voice. So there is uncertainty, but that is not a problem, because whatever happens, I want to ensure that there is also, as Laura said, emotional support for the students, making sure that there's also news coverage information that is reaching for everyone, by also maybe introducing a Brexit newsletter that reaches the whole of the community.
I think we will use various channels to announce them what will change and what they should do, what they can do, and try our best to help them to solve the question, to solve the problem, and then we will let them know whatever the government will do, we will treat them equally with respect, and whatever they are EU student or international student, they will be treated equally, and they don't need to worry about their study or life. Yeah.
I guess a slightly more cynical question is, if the government appears to not know too much about what their Brexit strategy is. Like, how effective can communication from the international students officer be over what's happening next with Brexit?
You know, that's why I suggested regular updates. So if they keep on being undecided, we'll keep on announcing their indecision, but students will remain informed at least. And when they make a decision, they will get the information.
Yeah, I mean, that's great, but you don't want to receive a notification every day saying, well, we don't know what's happening. So if I were to be elected, I would just, as I said, on the SU website, we can have like a board saying, this is what we know, this is what we want to know, and this is what we're trying to get from the government, like the information we're trying to get from them, so that we actually know what's going on. And if we don't, well, you can update on the progress, but yeah, that's...
Just to correct, I didn't intend to send out emails. We don't even read emails. We don't get we don't open our notifications. I spoke about updates on the website or an information board.
I meant like updates every. Well, you say updates often and every day, and saying, well, we don't know more than we did before, which wouldn't go anywhere. But that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, I think every question will get their best resolution. So we will say so, and all the people they are smart, so they will find out how to figure it out.
Can you repeat the question again? Sorry.
It was with the government not being particularly clear on their policy on Brexit, how effective can the communication from the international students officer be?
Well, the main job of the international students officer would be to focus on the international students and the university, and to have the politics of the entire Brexit decision to be not of the main interest, however it does affect, but to work with what we get from the government and try to work that in the community here.
And any sort of final quick thoughts before we wrap up on Brexit?
Maybe we can cite some books to collect opinion from the public, from the student, and we can figure out it every week. And it's not a heavy burden for us, but it's an effective way to collect opinion from the student, what they are really interested in, what they are really worried about. Yeah, and we can together to think how to deal with it. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Well, I don't envy any of you if you are successful in being an international students officer, because Brexit is going to be something that is not going away anytime soon. As with development, obviously we've had some big discussion of some very, very big topics, but we have run out of time for our international students officer candidate debate. So over to Tim in the studio for some more punditry. Cheers.
Thank you.
Cheers, Cameron. Right, we have Matt and Lucas here in the studio. Guys, first impressions of that debate there?
I thought it was a good debate, well presented. My issue really is that they sort of do say quite a lot of similar things, all of them. They don't really differentiate too much between themselves. But yeah, overall I thought a good debate.
Yeah, very good debate. Very interesting points raised by all of the candidates. We have some suggestions for some new implementations, like the suggestion box, talking about mental health and more international events for international students. So I think there's a lot to work with, yeah.
We'll try not to get this using the B word Brexit, because obviously that's going to cause a lot of confrontation, surely. So let's start with Laura. She wants to create a dialogue with home and international students for better integration. How easy is this going to be, do you reckon?
I mean, I'm not. Lucas, you're an international student, so you're better placed to answer this than I am. I would say there's quite a lot of integration already now, or do you not get that?
I think there is. I'm not exactly sure how she wants to do this, the specifics of how she wants to implement this scheme. That will be something to look at, but it's a good idea to definitely will help bridge the gap between locals and international students.
Do you feel like there's a difference between you and home students, or do you not feel
I personally don't think so, but you know, that would depend on where you come from and how different the culture is from your home country when you move here. But I think it's already pretty good, but something that could be worked on. Yeah.
I guess looking at the specifics on something like that, CC wants to organise more events to build a bridge between local and international students to make a host-family agreement. Is that almost like a buddy system in that sense, do you reckon?
Yeah, I actually think that's quite a good idea, because it must be very, very disconcerting to come to essentially, in some cases, fly to this side of the world to study, and I think that's a very helpful thing if you have someone specific, one person you can go to. So I think that's quite a good idea of CC's there, to be honest with you.
With this buddy system, I wasn't sure, is she talking about just regular families, or is she talking about other students?
I think it includes the idea of accommodation as well. But I guess the question with that is, the standard of fees are different across, let's say with the UK and Spain, the UK and France, they're going to be different depending on each country as well.
Mm-hmm.
How difficult will that be to implement that, do you reckon?
Definitely. Another point I just want to raise as well is that with moving to university, obviously, one major part of that is, taking on more responsibility, becoming more independent. So living on your own is something that could be really, really good for that. And so I'm not exactly sure with this whole exchange program, buddying system, if that's the best way to go forward.
But I guess the idea, if there is somebody potentially in the university who can help you out and actually be a mentor in that sense, and you're exchanging views about cultures and identities, that's surely going to be important for the welfare of that person studying abroad, going into the country.
I think the danger is if you get too isolated through that. If you focus too much on one person, I think it has to be cross-cultural. I think that's really important. There's no point coming to a different country and then staying within your own culture. I think you have to get out and be cross-cultural and integrate into cultures. Otherwise, it's not going to work. But in principle, I do think it's a good idea. But the worry is that you become too isolated, I think.
Yeah, that's right.
Talking about culture, Chino wants to celebrate cultural holidays. She's been very, very passionate about this as well, one of her key campaign policies. But there's already International Culture Week at the university, which links in with sports and welfare and development on that in terms of that policy. And, different societies, the Chinese and Japanese societies have China and Japan Day. So is there a sense, that it's already been done and she's just got to follow up to this? Or because the original idea has already been done in that sense, I guess.
I think the role of the international officer is to facilitate these events and help with them, not necessarily with organizing them. So we already have a lot of country-specific societies which are doing an amazing job at trying to integrate new students through these kind of events. So definitely they should be supported.
How have you found that, by the way, in your experience of sort of learning about that as well?
Yeah, I think it's very interesting that these things are obviously very, very open to everyone, and they do bring people together and make the transition to university life here a bit easier. But I guess the question is, to what extent is the officer meant to be creating these events or just facilitating?
Yeah, this is my issue, because how I feel at the minute they're all pitching something that's quite similar to the things that societies do anyway. Yeah. So they need to offer a point of differentiation. They need to offer something different, and I don't think they really do that at the minute.
Looking at the crossover, Ruwei wants to, international students, regardless of religious, cultural and social backgrounds, should all be treated equally, looking at improving the welfare of them. Is that too much of a vague statement to win the candidacy for the international students officer role? Because the others potentially are more specific in the way they go about that.
Yes, I think that's too vague. Because what she says is what every international students officer should want to do anyway. She's not saying anything that's particularly surprising. She needs to go into specifics about how she's going to do that specifically, because that's like saying we want everyone to be nice to each other. Of course we want everyone to be nice to each other. How are we going to do that?
Yeah, I completely agree with Matthew on that point. It's easy to throw out keywords, buzzwords, but following up on them is another issue, and then having specific ideas of how to implement that is going to be the real challenge.
One thing that Ruwei does want to do, though, is the crossover between welfare and activities officers, and combining that to create activities for international students who would actually benefit so much from that as well. And that cross communication in that officer role is going to be so crucial to whoever gets the role in the end, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's so important to work within your team. It's important, I guess, that the international students officer feels that they can work across the university, because then it will help integration, I think, generally for international students.
Yeah, we're talking about mental health now, aren't we, specifically, or
more the crossover, just general communication between the officers' roles. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, any way that the officers can cross over and communicate with the university will definitely benefit them.
But I guess with welfare, you have that mental health
you do have that
as well.
Problem as well, and I think it's good if the international officer can also count as sort of work as a counsellor as well for people to come to.
Is that something which would take time, do you think, or would it depend on, you know, the specific student who would be benefiting from that, from studying abroad and then coming into this country to study in Sheffield? Because I guess every person's different, and it's gonna you know, every person will understand that differently as well.
Yes.
Sorry, go on, no.
Sorry, it's definitely very time-consuming thing, isn't it? Because it'd be a lot of individual cases, it'd be a lot of work. But I think it could be something very beneficial if people know there's something they can come to and someone who will listen to them. And maybe it would be an idea for these officers to have some sort of basic mental health training as well. That would be beneficial.
Yeah, I think mental health is so key, especially with international students, because it's such a different situation to home students that I think it's a really good idea of Laura's to really focus on that for next year.
Now, Rana wants to ease the integration into Brexit for international students by remaining a strong community, and that every international student's voice is heard and listened to. One way she wants to do this is through cultural and artistic events. Firstly, on Brexit, is the situation too unpredictable to make such a pledge like that?
Yes, because as far as I know, Theresa May doesn't know what's going on, so I don't know how anyone else can.
Yeah, no one knows what's going on, so that is a very vague statement. Obviously, with the university does a good job at keeping us informed already about all the changes that we need to know about, but I think it's more about the message that we are standing strong as a community, and the things that we can do in that regard are fairly limited, but we can show that message. Yeah.
But I guess with the artistic aspect of that, visually, it's going to be quite good in that sense, isn't it? You think so?
I think it would bring people together.
Yeah, and obviously they have to cover it. It would be awful if the international student officer didn't mention Brexit. It's a massive thing. It's a massive thing that will affect their demographic. But right now, no one knows what's happening, so how can they?
And finally, guys, before we move on, for you, who won that debate?
I was quite impressed with Laura. I liked how she focused on her mental health. She seemed to know a little bit more about exactly what she wanted to do. So yeah, for me, Laura.
There was one good policy suggestion by Chino, which I found was the suggestion box for students who aren't fairly confident with English and bringing ideas forward. I think that could be a very good policy point, but as in overall who won the debate, I think it's hard to say. I think all of the candidates had some good points to raise. So I can't really...
Don't worry about it. Cheers, guys. Thanks for that. Back to Cameron with the sports officer debate. Enjoy.
Every year, members of our Students' Union get the opportunity to vote on referenda on student issues, elect 2 new student trustees, and elect 8 student officers. The SU officers hold their position for a year, representing us and getting paid in the process. It's a vital role as the officers are responsible for making the student voice heard and shaping our student experience. The 8 officers are Education, Development, Activities, Sport, Women's, Welfare, International Students and President. We use alternative vote to elect our officers, which works like this. Voters list as many or as few candidates as they like by preference until they have selected all the candidates they wish to vote for. For example, if 4 candidates are running for Activities Officer, you would list the candidate you most want to win first, your next preference second, and so on. But you don't have to vote for all the candidates if you don't want to. And if you really don't want any of the candidates to win, you can vote to reopen nominations. In this example, under first past the post, the system we use for general elections, the red hexagon would win despite most people voting against them. Under alternative vote, the candidate who has received the fewest first preference votes is eliminated and their second preference votes are redistributed. Votes will continue to be redistributed until one candidate has a clear majority. Under alternative vote, purple square ends up the winner. We vote the same way for our student trustees, but because more than one is elected, they have a different threshold to reach. Forge will be covering elections every step of the way, so keep your eye on our coverage and make sure that you know your vote.
Well, hello everybody, I am Ewan Somerville and we're here on Forge TV for Forge Debates. As you can see, the presenter has slightly changed here. I've merged into Tim Adams, who is now a pundit for us.
Moved up one seat, yeah.
Hello Tim and hello Nicole.
Hi, good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too. And it's an exciting night so far, so you can feel the tension in the air. Forge Debates being a big time for the candidates, a big opportunity as well. We've now got the sports officer and president roles as the night reaches its climax. So, sports officer, what's this all about then?
It's about understanding the social aspects of sports, you know, in terms of racism, LGBT plus, disability. This Girl Can is always a massive initiative, and if you look at the work that Sarah Morses, the sports officer this year, has done, so crucial in actually creating that environment for people in those societies and communities to actually feel comfortable, inclusive about what sport can offer and how sport can play a role in expanding that as well. But also, you know, varsity is obviously big, but also looking at actually supporting the black and gold clubs from football and rugby to, you know, your less well-known clubs as well, and understanding, you know, there is a level playing field in that aspect as well.
Absolutely, and we know from the work of Sarah Morse, Nicole, that mental health is a massive thing in sport. It almost feels like a renewed drive, doesn't it, for mental health?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's something that's really been reflected in the candidates' manifestos this year. I think there's been a big push to try and increase the numbers involved in social sport. We all know that a little bit of physical activity can genuinely improve your mental health, and I think it will be interesting to see if any of these, when these candidates are elected, one of them is elected, just how closely they work with the existing services at uni to try and really promote that message that sport can improve your mental health.
And keep the legacy of Sarah Morse, of course. So I think continuity is a really important thing with these SU officers, given it changes every year. So on to the president then, very quickly. That'll be our final one of the night, and a rowdy one. I'm expecting a pretty spicy debate here. Tim, are you looking forward to that one?
It's the biggie, isn't it? It's always the one which does attract the most attention.
It's the big role.
It's interesting this year, obviously, with the lack of the head of the SLS, because traditionally there's always been with Lillian and obviously Kieran Maxwell before that.
I call it a bit of a revolving door between SLS and the SU officers, but of course, you know, they work hard for it. But it's good, like you say, it's good to have something different.
It'll be interesting. It will freshen it up, and you know, there's some really, really exciting candidates in there. Some of the videos you're watching, you know. As well, that was impressive. So some of those. So we'll see. It'll be really, really fun to watch.
And Nicole, expecting a spicy one as well?
I really am. Yeah, there's obviously president is one of those that allows you to get really passionate about the things that interest you the most. And I think we've got some really interesting candidates, some focus on some liberation groups as well, which is interesting. Focus on stress and mental health, as you'd expect. So I think it will be a really feisty one, because these are issues that are really close to these candidates' hearts.
I think the interesting thing with the president is that obviously we have an all-women committee in the last year, but with the sports officers we've got all women again, and then we've got obviously just one female candidate running for the president. Do you think that will maybe change the dynamic a bit?
Potentially. To be fair, well, the thing is, I mean, we know the campaigns that the SU have been running to actually encourage women to get into politics, because obviously historical context comes down to that you know, that should be the case. And you know, in terms of sports, to be honest, it really doesn't make a difference it's who's best for the job at the end of the day.
Yeah, Nicole, you were saying earlier that perhaps with sports it's nice to have some diversity in there.
Yeah, I mean, I think don't get me wrong, I think the current sports officers have done an exceptional job. I think previous ones have. I think the new candidates do also look really promising. I do also think that with the focus on women in sport, LGBT in sport, sometimes you feel like maybe other groups, liberation groups, getting left behind. People of colour maybe aren't as well represented, because we do have, you know, a lot of white women running for this role. So I think it will be interesting to see how the officers manage to balance all the different liberation groups and not just the traditionally white ones, as it were.
Are we going to maybe hedge our bets and go for a particular candidate running into these two debates?
We'll see after the debate. It's probably the fairest way to call it there.
Oh, okay. Same with you, Nicole?
I would agree.
You'd agree. Yeah, I think, you know, I'm really looking forward to it. I think we've had an interesting night so far, but it can only get better, can't it? And like we say, just try to emphasise for us quickly before we go back to Cameron. Just try to emphasise with us, you know, the actual importance of those roles. Really, really important. Right. Well, we're going to carry on with these debates. Over to our 4 sports officer candidates. Hope you enjoy. We'll be back soon with some analysis. Over to you, Cameron.
Cheers, Ewan. We have some news, and that is that Mem can't be here, unfortunately, because she's not very well, so it's just going to be the 2 candidates for sports officer. But we're joined by Britt, and we're joined by Annie got that right. I did get that right. Okay, good. So, how are you both?
Yeah, not bad.
Feeling a little nervous.
A little nervous. There's nothing to be nervous about. So, kicking straight off into it, if you excuse that awful pun, inclusions is like a massive issue all over university life and the SU, but also in sports. It's Pride in Sport week. At the end of last week, there were some like workshops on inclusivity in sport. And where do you guys feel that inclusivity can be better in sport? So you, Brittany.
So inclusions is a massive thing in my manifesto. My main thing was getting more people to try sports because, like, for me personally, I didn't join until second year. And a big barrier was, like, I felt like nothing was for me, and I felt like I was going to join and not be very good at it. But realistically, like, joining was the best thing I ever did. And I wish that more people kind of took the chance with sport. We have like 58 sports. We're so lucky to have so much on offer. And there really is like a sport for everyone. I know that's dead cheesy. But there is a sport for everyone, and it's just getting people to like face the barriers that they may have with like, maybe they feel too anxious to join, and there's stuff that sport can do to like tackle that.
How would you respond?
Yeah, I completely agree with that. But I think as well, like international students, I think they feel sometimes because they're only here for a year and they don't feel as involved. And I think definitely it needs to be publicised more for them. I think there needs to be more like intergender sport as well. Like, it's so popular. I run like a social session on a Sunday, and the title of it is men's social football, but it's actually not for just men. Like, women can go as well. So I think there needs to be a lot more emphasis on that.
Yeah, because there's an interesting issue. There's like obviously big discussions over like gender in sports and all that kind of thing. But actually, sort of maybe surprisingly to some people, the role of sports officer is often and has been sort of for the last few years held by a woman, and all of our candidates this year are women as well. What do you think needs to be done more in terms of like tackling sort of the barriers for like LGBT students, or you mentioned like international students or Erasmus students? Like, what more do you think needs to be done on that front?
So I actually went to one of the workshops of the LGBT week last week, and I found it very, very insightful. Just to have the perspective, because obviously it's so easy to look at things at face value when you're not part of LGBT, but like there's so many barriers that we face, and like the gender neutral facilities that were put in place during the week, like that is such a big step, but it could be so easily implemented throughout. So kind of pushing for more gender neutral facilities. Like, a lot of people don't know, like intramural, like netball and stuff, it's actually mixed teams. So like there's so much more opportunity for things to be mixed. And again, like publicity is half of it. Like, we just need to like push for more publicity of all these amazing things that we are actually doing to like overcome these barriers.
I think as part of women's football, I am super lucky to be part of such an inclusive club. I think everyone there feels like, excuse me, they can be who they are. And I think things like rainbow flags at varsity, like at Hillsborough, that would be amazing. Like, making people feel like they're really included. I know I feel like whatever people are at our club, they feel included. And I think there's definitely stereotypes that need to be broken down. There's certain sports that it's probably not as accepted, and I think there needs to be more done for them.
There are things like throughout sports, such as like the Rainbow Laces campaign. Do you think, though, sometimes that we can get distracted by more sort of, showy sort of inclusivity, and sometimes it can be a case where the actual barriers or actual issues aren't confronted?
Yeah, I completely understand that like some aspects can maybe look a bit patronising, like we're only like for example, like Pride in Sport Week, like it might come across like we're only interested for a week of the whole year, and like it's not an ongoing thing. But like, I think a big important thing would be to maybe get people who are part of a sport and who have been like maybe face barriers and then overcome them, to like have testimonies of them, to like showcase to other students that like it's not just the Rainbow Laces. Like, there are people who did overcome something, took part in a sport, and it was actually not as bad as what they thought it was going to be.
How would you respond?
Yeah, I agree. I think I've I've seen that a lot of the people who ran the LGBT week were like sort of white gay men, but there needs to be sort of more women involved, maybe more like transgender people, and I think that will really like speak to like people who are obviously like lesbian or transgender.
Yeah, definitely. Brittany, you want to implement inclusion-specific training. Is that sort of more off the back of the sort of things that we've spoken about today, and what form would that take?
Yeah, so there's a club captain like overall training day right at the beginning of the year that like all club captains and presidents have to go to, and inclusions is part of it, but it's quite like, I think it's like an hour, and I just think like bearing in mind like how much we want to like strive for inclusions and want this sport for all concept to be a reality, like it would be so beneficial if we had like specific training to promote inclusions for stuff like LGBT, disability, and like people with disabilities. Like they're all like weak campaigns, but it should be implemented throughout, and we should receive training so that we can not only implement it in a week but showcase it throughout and like make sure that everybody is fully involved.
So it would be like something that happened regularly, but like how would the training actually take place? Who would you get to sort of lead the training in that sense?
So Lauren, who works in Sport Sheffield, she led a training like session for Disability in Sport Week, and I thought she was really, really amazing. So getting people like her, maybe just more specialised people, like I think it's really useful to have external people come in and like properly discuss something that is their field and like pass on really insightful information to students, which can then benefit other students.
How would you respond, Ellie?
I think at Freshers' Fair it would be a good idea to have clubs at their stands show that they are LGBT supportive, because then I think that means that people will go there and think, oh, like men's football or men's rugby, like, you know, that those are the kind of sports where it is a bit more of a it is a bit more not talked about. And I think to talk about it openly, as soon as you start uni, before you've even gone to training, you know that is a place where you're going to be and feel comfortable. And I also think like club captains may have like a lot on their plate, and I think for me I would want the club captains to take more responsibility regards to mental health. But with LGBT, I think it would be a good idea to have a member of the club who maybe was LGBT and have them maybe be part of committee and have them be like, I don't know, LGBT sec, and like look after people who feel uncomfortable and really help to bring them out of their shell.
The two of you seem to really like want to take sort of training or like having committee positions. You seem to really want to sort of take these ideas of inclusivity and breaking down these barriers and really like, you know, be proactive with it. Is that something that you both like really considered important to your manifestos?
Yeah, so like after I drafted up my manifesto, I got told that like not every club has an inclusions officer, which I think is ridiculous. So like maybe like a sub point of my manifesto is kind of like making sure that everyone has an inclusions officer, and that maybe they go to the inclusions training and then they're responsible for like making sure that everyone's involved rather than it relying on club captains, because like Annie said, it's a lot of pressure on them.
If it was sort of something that you were told about afterwards, was this policy more of like an afterthought, or is it just like that's expanded like even more, or like?
Well, my manifesto was like to do with inclusions training, but I didn't know that not every, because we have an inclusions officer, but I just didn't know that not every team had one. So like I suppose it's always good to have feedback, and I'm glad I've been told this, because that is something that I'd really like to work on, obviously, because inclusions is such a massive part of what I would like to do. It's really good to know what we can work towards.
And then same question, was it like something that was really central for your
I think because of the sport that I'm in and how inclusive it is in that sense, I think it went over my head a bit that there are actually barriers, like, and there's so many barriers that have to be broken down, because I am in just such a safe environment where I play. But I think because of that is what I want to like replicate in every single club.
Thank you both very much. You both talk about mental health and well-being as regards to sports, and I think it was you, Annie, that mentioned it earlier. Can you explain your policies specifically about mental health and well-being?
So I thought that club captains could have some sort of training at the start of the year just to help them be more aware of maybe some of the signs. If that's not like possible, then maybe have somebody in the club who, like, I don't know, maybe like a buddy system where freshers could get paired with an older girl and like vice versa. And yeah, that would be really nice. And then just having making sure everyone knows they have a friend in the club and someone that they can go and talk to.
By yourself.
So there, I think Annie's point's fantastic, and I do think it's so vital that like the training is there. Again, it all comes down to like having the adequate training to be able to implement these policies. So in Mental Health Week, there was actually like a session which was like open for people to go to, but it wasn't compulsory. So I think making that mandatory, again, it like maybe comes down to having like specific days rather than just one training day at the beginning of the year. Because I went to that and it was useful to just maybe like think of things in more of a sensitive manner, and how to approach things and how to work on things and how to spot the signs. So yeah, I also wanted to work with the mental health services to kind of like promote fitness as being like vital in mental health and well-being. For me, like my mental health like improved massively when I joined my sport, and I'm sure a lot of people will say the same, like they were a lot happier once they joined like a team environment. Like I completely get like sport and fitness isn't for everyone, but like it is such a massive part of being happier and healthier, and I kind of want to work alongside like SAMS or something to collaborate with them and make sure we're like pushing sport and fitness to people.
I think as well, I think like let's talk about it, like let's have people say what their experience of mental health and playing sport at university was, because I think there's such a stigma around it because we can't see it, that it's not there when it is. And I just think having someone maybe come and talk to people about it would be amazing, and just say, look, like if these are the signs, like if you're feeling like this, like that's okay, like like it's normal.
Yeah, I mean, again, like as with inclusions, it appears that you both are very like passionate about this issue and want to be proactive with it. What sort of initiatives, when you talk about wanting to join up with like SAMS, for example, or perhaps some of the sort of well-being and mental health committees that we have at the SU, what sort of initiatives would you like want to put on in order to really promote that sense of the importance of mental health?
I hadn't really thought about initiative as of yet. I kind of, in my head, I just knew that if I was to become sports officer, it would be my first point of call to like maybe speak, because I haven't spoke to them yet. I would like to like speak to them and see what they'd be willing to do and what we could do to like collaborate and then work from there.
Okay, so is it like just about sort of expressing how important it is, or would you be open to, or would you consider sort of having specific like, I know like Film Unit, for example, are a committee that collaborate a lot with other societies, and obviously like it's very different connecting sports and like putting on special screenings. But like I think Film Unit are an example of a committee that really get that collaboration right, and they really work with other sort of committees. If you were wanting to sort of work with Mental Health Matters, for example, or Welfare Committee, like would there be like specific events or days that you might want to work on?
So like I kind of thought like if say a student had gone to SAMS and was like, I really don't know what to do, like I feel like maybe promoting like the social sports and stuff like that and like intramural as like a first point of like maybe try this because it might actually make you feel a bit better, because like it's so easy to like push for like, basically I just think fitness is such a natural and like organic way of feeling so much better, and we have so much on offer. Like the social sport program is so good, and we have so many options for people, so like why not push those and like try and make like I feel like it's just getting past that point of like, or do I, don't I, but it could be so beneficial for somebody. So like pushing social sport intramural, maybe like get them to join walking club, like go for a walk in the peaks or something like that. Yeah.
It's interesting you mentioned social sports there, and it's been mentioned sort of a lot. So sorry, did you have anything you wanted to quickly add?
I thought maybe having like mental health specific like sports sessions would be a good idea. So you could say if someone's feeling really anxious, you could have like a yoga session where everyone in that room has been feeling anxious, or having a boxing session where everyone in that room has been feeling really like stressed.
Yeah. So social sport is such a massive part of people's university life, and a nice sort of stat that gets thrown around a lot is that more people are involved in social sport than they are in black and gold, but black and gold can get like a lot of attention specifically with like varsity and those kind of like big blockbuster events. How would you both sort of ensure that social sport's given equal attention?
I'm just making sure that people feel appreciated. I haven't actually been to any social sport groups, but like one of my friends actually said to me the other day, she really wanted to take part in social sport netball, but she can't because it's on like 3 or 4 o'clock on a Friday and she has labs. So maybe like adjusting the timetables so that more people can take part in social sport, because that obviously it's kind of like the Wellbeing Wednesday and like having afternoons free on a Wednesday. Like you want everyone to have an equal go at having a go at the social sport. So maybe adjusting timetables.
I think there's like a stigma around social sport that it's not as good, or people who go don't participate in sport normally. So I thought having coaching badges for students who run social sport sessions would be a really good idea, because that means that then everyone has access to a really, really good, like top quality session, and then people will think, oh well, it's going to be a really good session, and then you're actually feeling more part of the university.
Yeah, there can be like, with you touching upon there, sort of the stigma around social sport, that it's not quite of the same level as black and gold. With regards to the coaching badges, how would you encourage students to get the most out of social sports, especially considering the sort of stigmas that there might be, and that might be in the back of people's minds?
I think you've just got to publicise it and just say, like, maybe do sort of like a film and like filming sessions, pictures of sessions. Like, I think definitely promoting like having same gendered sessions and things, that would make people really be like, I can go and meet whoever there. Like, it would be a really good idea.
I think it's more of a personal thing. Like, I feel like even if you're just taking part in social sport, you should feel happy in yourself that you're going out and doing that. Like, that's a big thing, and to be part of something's a big thing, and you should just feel happy in yourself that you're even going and taking part in something, because a lot of people at uni will kind of just not, and it is a big thing to take part in social sport, and they should feel proud of themselves for taking part. So they shouldn't feel like it's any less just because they're not black and gold. Like, they're as much part of the uni as anybody else.
And is it really for both of you about like really publicising that and like just making sure that the positive messaging is there?
Yeah, maybe it could even be a case of getting like forward coverage for some social sport elements and getting like a little film made so that they feel like, oh, that was actually really cool that they came and filmed me. And because I can get like black and gold is like shoved down everyone's throats, but maybe it's getting like film coverage for them.
I think as well they don't have to feel like they're not part of black and gold just because, like, I don't really know, like, social sport could be part of black and gold, and that could be something that we could make happen.
Great. So something that you touched on there was with your one friend who wanted to get involved in social sports, but it clashed with her timetable. A popular officer candidate pledge specifically for sports, but also it bleeds into some of the other officer candidates as well, is to keep Wednesday afternoons free. How would you like go about doing that?
So it's such a tough one because it really is coming to one of my big points in my manifesto of just getting the university to like appreciate sport being important in a student's life. I just feel uni is so stressful enough on its own, and you shouldn't have to worry about like changing labs just to go and do your sport which you signed up to do. Like, the experience of uni is much as the social side as it is the academic one, and like getting the big dogs of uni to understand this, like, it's so difficult because you can't show someone how something feels, and it's so difficult, but anyone who plays a sport will tell you how important it is. And for that reason, I just believe that we should be fully pushing the university to just get it, and then maybe they might listen with the Wednesday afternoons.
Might some people argue, though, that the university already understands how important sports are because of like varsity is like one of the biggest calendar events.
Yeah, but varsity happens once a year and people are doing those fixtures throughout. Like, varsity is the only coverage we even get. We take part in a lot of like of the campaigns, like Mental Health Week, like rugby union. The captain sat on a panel for mental health, which I thought was genuinely like incredible, because obviously rugby has such a stigma with like toxic masculinity, and for a member of rugby to sit on a mental health panel, I just thought was like, wow, like why is this not getting advertised? But nothing got said from like outside the union, and it upsets me because we actually do so much, so I don't actually think that they do take it seriously.
How would you respond, Annie? First of all, about how you'd try and get Wednesday afternoons off.
I think Wednesday afternoons is a hard one because obviously I would, as sports officer, struggle to dictate the timetable that the university provides, but I think maybe introducing some sort of flexible timetable where there's options, so maybe one that was at 9 a.m. on a Wednesday and one that was on like 8 a.m. on a Thursday, and I know that would be awful to have to go into uni at 8, but I suppose if you really, really want to play, then you'd make that sacrifice.
Might that be like quite a sort of an admin nightmare for the people who sort of timetable at university?
Yeah, definitely, but I think if it's important to the students and they want that, then we're paying the university so much money. If that's what the students really would want, then I think that's something that they should consider.
And to be honest, like the uni's all for saying that they're about the like the students' well-being, but when it comes down to it, like we're crying out for, like, how many years have we been saying like Wednesday should be off, and like we've only just like scratched the surface with like well-being Wednesdays, but like it's been going on for years, and it's like, if well-being is genuinely that important, why hasn't it been done yet?
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think, like, do we think that Loughborough or Durham's top athletes are sat in a classroom on a Wednesday afternoon? Like, I think the university, if it wanted to, could prioritise people who are playing. They could prioritise their timetables.
And of course, it's not just important for black and gold, it's also important for like lots of different aspects of the SU. How would you go about sort of communicating that message?
What message?
That how important it is for like not just black and gold and competitive sports, but just more generally as well.
Just like, I think just letting the students speak for themselves, like letting attendants speak for themselves. Like, so many people participate in sport more than once a week, like gym memberships, like gym attendance, all that sort of stuff.
Oh yeah, it just comes back to my point of well-being. Like, well-being of students and students' experience should be the number one priority for a university. And if people are genuinely asking for Wednesdays, like, you can find a way to make it work.
I think the big sort of thing over the Wednesday afternoons off is that like there are some courses that just absolutely don't get Wednesday afternoons off. There are some courses that are quite good at that. How would you go about sort of trying to communicate with the uni, or sort of just go about bringing all of that together? Because it appears that with some departments the messaging has worked, but then with others it hasn't. Is it just a case of like constantly giving out the same message, or is there another strategy perhaps?
I think it's a case of like, if you don't ask, you don't get, and you just got to keep asking until you get it. Like, if you're going to back down at the first sign of failure, then like you're never going to get it. And like, to be honest, I feel like there are ways you can work around it. Like, maybe I'm just being like naive, but I do just think you just need to push it, because we have made an improvement. Like, Sarah's done really well to get these Wellbeing Wednesdays in. Who's to say that it can't happen?
Yeah, definitely. And I think obviously some departments will be better at it because they maybe get priority in the timetable, like choosing when they would want to teach. So I think maybe just making them all work a bit more closely together in organising a timetable, rather than every department saying like, I want these times.
Okay. You mentioned gym memberships there. You have some policies on gym membership. Would you like to tell us a little bit about those?
Yeah, so I think people every year campaign for cheaper gym memberships, and I think I understand now that that might not be achievable because people say it every year and it never seems to happen. But I think comparatively, what I pay for and what I'm getting, it doesn't quite match up. I think there needs to be more gym classes, there needs to be better equipment, and there the studio maybe needs to be filled a bit more. And I think that if you were getting more sort of bang for your buck, then people might be more willing to pay a bit more.
Okay, this is a major one for me. I just don't like Goodwin at all. It's
That got an applause for those watching at home.
I think it was really outdated for a start. It was built in like the 1960s. It's not accessible. So when I was doing stuff in Disability and Sport Week, it fully hit me. Like, it's just not really accessible to disabled students at all. And I find that really sad because that does restrict a lot of students from being able to use the gym at all. And why are we at a university that is restricting students from exercising? So I would love to push to get a new Goodwin building, but obviously I'm not expecting it to happen in a year. It's going to take a lot of pushing. But again, comes back to my original point of like getting the university to appreciate the value of sport, because as soon as you get them to appreciate that, they'll start funding other things. And then if we get a new Goodwin building, there'll be better facilities, more capacity, and then we can make cheaper gym memberships.
I think, like, in terms of accessibility, I think there is a room downstairs in the gym that is accessible to disabled students, and I think maybe they don't know about that. It's called the activity room too. I think it's like less well known about. Maybe putting on alongside the social sport timetable, putting on like disability student only timetabled session would be a good idea, because they can access that room and they should have access to it.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So again, as I feel like I've emphasised with every debate we've had so far, there are some massive issues that the candidates for this position, sports officer, needs to think about. And we're going to have some discussion on those issues from you and in the studio and the pundits. Cheers.
Thanks a lot, Cameron. Thanks a lot for that. Really interesting debate there. 2 words, black and gold, of course, well actually 3 words. There, of course, the colours of Sheffield Uni, and you can see it in the kit there of one of our future sports officers there. Now, Tim made the pun earlier, I'll make it again, ready to cringe. You know, these officers, these candidates do kick off on the pitch, but not so much kicking off in the debate there. So, Tim and Nicole, I'm the only one who laughed. Tim and Nicole, so, first of all, generically, the debate, how was it for you? As expected?
I think as expected, yeah. I think both of them have their individual policies. I think the manifestos, there are some policies which they're pretty more passionate about than others, because I think they're pretty more realistic than others as well. But yeah, I think overall it was a really interesting debate. Shame Mem couldn't be here. I think she's ill. But
contrary to the 4 candidates that we,
we
announced initially.
But really good. Enjoyed it.
Yeah. Nicole, any surprises for you there?
Not really. I think I was a little bit surprised at how long they focused on mental health. I think that really does emphasise again just how important it is to all these candidates. I did think they might talk a little bit longer about gym memberships, because again, that's something that came up in all 3 of the candidates' manifestos, Mem as well. And having done the round table with them yesterday for Forge Radio, I did get more of a sense that gym membership and access, especially for sports clubs, was going to come up a bit more, because it did seem something that they were quite passionate about.
Especially with a women's only gym that Sarah's actually created recently, yeah.
And yeah, speaking of Sarah's legacy, we've obviously just had the Pride in Sport Week as well, haven't we, as part of LGBT plus History Month, which is such an important issue. And like we were saying earlier, perhaps LGBT does get neglected sometimes in sport, with the whole focus on, you know, mental health and women. So it's kind of lots of issues associated with the sports office. I think it almost becomes more of a kind of a social issues role, doesn't it, really?
That's going to be key. I mean, I've been really lucky as head of sport for Forge Radio this year. I've had the opportunity to get people from society, put that in, from societies to sport clubs, and actually create that overall picture where social issues and sport can be a metaphor for that. In Disability and Sport Week, and having David Weatherhill, who is a para table tennis athlete, in here, we did a 45-minute talk with him in gallery room 3, I think it was. Absolutely fascinating talk about mental health, and that's where you get the overlap with a welfare officer, and that's where that communication and that jigsaw puzzle, it pieces it all together. And with LGBT, with disability, with racism, with this Skull Can coming up, so crucial for these 2 to actually not just maintain them, but actually expand them with their own ideas as well.
Okay, so Nicole, we've got kind of a delving into those policies. We've got kind of a common thread, haven't we, between Brits and Annie there, which is cheaper gym memberships. Now, me being part of the University of Sheffield Athletics Club, I have experience being on a committee with a treasurer who has tried his best to actually deal with this and get us cheaper memberships, because we do have to fork out £22 a month or £28 a month for a peak membership at Goodwin, when we're actually only training to go and compete for the uni. So it seems somewhat unjust to actually charge us when we're actually going sometimes on the national stage, like at Bucks last weekend, and competing. So what do you make of that pledge from both candidates to reduce those memberships?
I think it's a really nice idea. Unfortunately, given that, so as you said, lots of people from sports clubs, from sports officers have been pushing and agitating for this, not much has been done over the years. So I would really love for these candidates to be successful. I think it doesn't just benefit sports clubs, it benefits everybody. We've talked about how important sport is for mental health. Something as simple as going to the gym for a jog, that can really help someone. And I think that if the university recognised that more, if they could help to subsidise potentially gym membership for students, that would be, it would be a dream come true. I do think that perhaps it's unrealistic, and maybe the candidates might be better off focusing their attentions on things that may be more easy to impact, like social sport. I think some of the points that Annie raised throughout the debate about perhaps potentially having social sports sessions specifically for potentially anxious people, people who maybe are struggling with depression. Yeah. I think those are things that would actually really appeal to students. And given that social sports are free for a lot of students, or £2 for others, that is maybe something that requires a little bit more attention as well.
Yeah, it's about offering something different, isn't it? And Tim, it's not only just the gym that costs a lot in sport. It's the wider issues as well, like transport and sports and strength and conditioning, massages and stuff. One of the candidates has got kind of a policy for that as well, haven't they?
Yeah, that's interesting, because again, one thing that we've done unfortunately this year, we don't look what happens on the pitch, on the track, on the court. It's what happens off it as well, and the impact of the facilities and the infrastructure, whether that be at Goodwin or now at Norton as well, but also doing that in a way which doesn't just maximise the potential of those facilities as well, but also creates that environment where everyone can feel inclusive in doing so. And again, I think both of them came across really well in that, actually.
Yeah, just to add to that, I was going to say, I think Mem, who's obviously unfortunately not hit with us tonight, she did have some very specific things about increasing the information and like the level of information that students get, because there are funding grants, there are participation grants, but a lot of students aren't aware of those things, and therefore they're not accessing things that could, if you don't have the money to get rugby shoes or something like that, this could really get you involved.
Yeah, it's that widening participation, isn't it? And the many millions of you watching at home may be aware of the social sport programme, which is set up by Martin Cook, who is, shout out to him, he's my athletics coach at the University of Sheffield Athletics Club. We knew it from the commentary at Bucks this weekend, didn't we, Tim?
Yeah, we did. Yes, yeah.
Certainly a face to remember, and a very successful person as well. But this social sport programme, on a more serious note, is so important, isn't it? And it's actually incredible. I did do a report on it for Forge Sport, contrary to what Britt said, in the a few months ago, and actually it was absolutely fascinating. I went along to women's boxing. I went along to squash, social women's football. The true array of things on this plate are incredible, aren't they, Tim?
Social sport is about, giving people an opportunity to get into sport for the first time, to try something out. I remember speaking to Alex Fraser, who took part in the first female varsity bout last year, and she'd only tried boxing when she got to the university. Absolutely loved it. I think she went through social sport and in the end is on a Sports Sheffield committee now. Absolutely fantastic in what it can do to people who are anxious, working with that mental health aspect to create that environment where people can feel comfortable in what they're doing. But if it's not for them, it's not for them. But if it is, there are the channels, not just in social sport, but after that, to get into that potentially elite level after.
And very quickly, Nicole, before we move back onto the debate floor and to the much anticipated president, the Goodwin plan, is it too ambitious?
Unfortunately, I think it is. I think it shouldn't be. I think that Brit's main plan for it is essentially just to increase disability access, and that should never be something that we're saying is too ambitious. That should be a fundamental right for all students here to be able to have access to the sports facilities.
Like we said, it was built in the 60s, Goodwin Sports Centre, and it's not exactly the best, is it? But it'll be interesting to see who gets the votes of the students there and who triumphs in the end. But now it's on to the much anticipated, like I said, climax of the evening here at Forge Debates, night one. Over to camera now for the presidential candidates.
So we're on to our final debate of the night now, before night two, tomorrow, same time, same place. We're joined by the candidates for president. So hello, everyone. How are we all?
Yeah, good, thank you. And you?
Thank you. I'm really good. Cheers. We'll get into it because I feel like we don't want too much niceties. Everyone is anticipating this debate. So there are lots of really, really interesting and ambitious policies which I think we'd come to expect from presidential candidates. My massive question really, and it's a slightly irritating one, but it's where is the money going to come from? So we start specifically with Gabe. You want to introduce a sports accessibility fund and you want to give £20,000 of extra funding to societies. Where is that going to come from?
Well, sorry, wire's a bit caught there. It's going to come from three main sources. So the first one is the NUS is actually about to cut its affiliation fee. So currently that's in the range of sort of £55,000 to £60,000 a year. This will be cut by as much as a third. That's immediately money back in our pockets that we can spend. The second way is that we're going to explore new sponsorship and commercial opportunities within the Students' Union. Obviously, this would be, we must remember that the SU is a charity, not a business, and this should be done tastefully. But I believe there are opportunities which we can do in terms of sponsorship. For example, the popular night out, Dance Your Socks Off, the sponsorship for that totaled £1,000, and that's just for a single night. The third way is through, although it's become a bit of a joke, we do have a food van. It will enter operation, and when it does operation, it will turn a profit. So once you bring all those things together and consider them all as one, we're well above, the 20,000 plus whatever money goes into the Sports Accessibility Fund that I'm pledging. So while it's ambitious, it's also achievable, and I think that's the most important thing.
You mentioned the food van there. That became operational, without sounding like we're talking about the Death Star, this week. Obviously, it's a very, very new thing, and it's taken a long time to come in. How do you feel about kind of the idea that there's no actual guarantee over how much money that's going to pull in?
Well, naturally, it's impossible to tell what will happen in the future, but the forecasts for that are positive. Again, we don't know any exact numbers, but from what I've heard, we're expected to make money from that. And obviously, any money that we do make from that comes straight back into the SU, straight back into things that, we can do to make student lives better.
Can I just add to that? So the NUS affiliation fees are set to be cut, but how can you be absolutely certain that by September 2019 they will be cut by 15 grand and for Sheffield University?
Well, firstly, because we know the proportion of how much is going to be cut. If you look at the NUS white paper, the proposals vary slightly, but all of them are at least a third. Secondly, the way that 20,000 extra societies would be set, that's by changing budgets that would come into effect at the end of the academic year. This cut is set to come into effect for 2020. So when we are setting the budgets during our term, we will be setting budgets with that cut coming into account. The budgets for next year are already set by the previous officer team. So this is about changing the budget, moving into the 2020 academic year.
So you're promising something not for your term, but for the term after yours?
Well, I mean, it's not like I can magically change budgets which have already been set, but it's something that's doable. The money will be there, and it's a really exciting thing to do because societies are such an important part of our union. They, the vast majority of students engage with the society in some way. There are over 3,000 on committees alone. There are hundreds more. For instance, in Jake's Geography Society, there are 600 members.
I would just add, I don't think it is the majority of all students that engage with societies and sports. I think there's a huge number of students in our Students' Union that actually don't engage with societies and sports. And so I know a lot of your manifesto is centred around societies and sports, but I'd like to ask what you're doing for the rest of the student body.
Well, I'm glad you asked, because actually my main policy doesn't regard, well, obviously it brings those things into regard, but my main policy is a comprehensive accessibility strategy which will help everyone. This is something that will be, a review of our SU from the top to the bottom, looking at the building itself, looking at our structures, look at our democratic processes and so on and so forth, taking into account the voices and uplifting the voices of liberation groups, then producing a really comprehensive report. And I know that you just mentioned that that the 20,000 for societies won't be until 2020. This will happen in an academic year. We will have a comprehensive report which we can then go and implement to really change our SU. And it's from simple things such as, for example, autistic students have told me that they get sensory overload in our building. That's as simple as bringing the earplugs, which we already have down in the nights out, up onto the concourse or by the reception desk so that people can get them. And then you get onto much more difficult questions, such as our elections and, whether racism is at play. For example,
statistics show that in elections, often people with Chinese and Indian sounding names do worse into elections. We need to look at unconscious biases among students and answer why that is happening, because it's not because these students run amazing campaigns and for some reason they're losing out. So it would be something that really goes from the basic level, easy things to which we can quickly target and fix, to much more broad, difficult questions.
But again, your comprehensive accessibility strategy would not come into effect until the end of your term. So it would be for the following academic year. So for those second years who are voting for you now, hoping that these changes will come into effect for their final year at university, that's actually not the case.
Well, I think it's very short-sighted of you to think about everything in terms of a year. We have absolutely, our SU is going to be around for, decades, and we have to think about what legacy we're leaving. It's impossible to make big change overnight. And if you want to be ambitious and you want to get things done, you have to use your entire term to do that. By the end of my term, I guarantee we will have the policy in place. The changes will be starting to be made. I can guarantee that. And so to suggest that I'm, simply kicking the can down the road or, doing things which will not affect current students is just not correct.
So what about the issues facing those students right now that we could fix quite quickly with feasible policies right now for the next academic year?
Well, it's all well and good, but the thing is that policies, the limit on a policy at our Students' Union is 200 words. So we can make obviously small-scale solutions can be made quickly, and I'm happy to do that. But we need to think bigger as well. It's not like just because I have big plans and things that I want to do in the long term doesn't mean there isn't stuff that we can do in the meantime, stuff that, can be fixed more quickly. One is not to the detriment of the other.
I think I just wanted to jump in before that and say, when it comes to policies, societies and sports teams are both cornerstones of the university community, and we should obviously respect them, think they're brilliant, and we should diverge funding towards them. However, what I do really think is, when it comes to offering big policies, we should look to cater to everybody. And like Emily says, some people aren't involved in societies or sports teams. Some people feel that societies and sports teams maybe don't represent their interests. Maybe just don't want to get involved. Maybe people are scared and they don't want to be involved, and that's fine. What I want to do is I want to start an SU music festival, and everybody loves music. It's very rare that people dislike music, and it would cater for everybody's needs. Now, the whole idea of that policy is to give people something that everybody can get behind. You can have student-led bands, you can have student-led artists, you can have so many people who want to get involved. And it would just be fantastic going from the bottom up and from the top down to get everybody just involved in an SU Music Festival. It's my personal opinion.
I've been quite interested by this policy of an SU Music Festival. The lineup for Platform Festival was announced just a couple of days ago.
Yeah, I saw that on Forge. I saw it yesterday, actually.
How would your music festival differ from the sort of festivals and celebrations of performing arts and music and all those kind of things in RSU?
So to be honest, I looked at the Platform Festival, and before I say anything else, what a fantastic festival that is. I mean, it's a brilliant festival. It raises money for very causeable charities, and everyone should really get behind it. When it happens, I'd urge everyone to support it. Now, my music festival is different in nature because I want to make it completely unique to Sheffield. Now, we can have Sheffield students, we can have Sheffield teaching and learning staff, we can have alumni. There's unlimited potential for this policy. So the way that I want it to work is quite simple. You give students a platform, obviously, I didn't want to make a pun there, but you give students a platform to, go get their names out. We've got the Octagon. What a fantastic venue that is. You can get so many people in there. You've got the concourse, you've got Bar 1, and you've got Foundry, of course. Now, my music festival is different in nature because there's so many university students who are in bands. They might play a keyboard in the room, they might play guitar. I mean, I play piano myself. I haven't played it for a while, and I never carried it on because, there's a lack of ambition for people who might just fall out of love with music. At the end of the day, if you give people a chance to start believing that they can go and create some positive change, to give them a platform to go out there and to show students, actually, the SU is offering me this wonderful thing. I've just played in front of 2,000 people. What a brilliant policy that'd be to get behind.
I sort of refer back to my previous question about funding. Like, that's going to be a massive sort of ambitious policy. Like, where would you sort of see to get the funding for that?
Well, obviously, if Gabe's correct, I'd have 15 grand straight away to play with, so that wouldn't be a problem.
I am correct, so yeah, you would.
So that'd be quite easy to fund it. In all seriousness, alongside that, you could ticket the event. I mean, how do nights like Pop-Tarts and Raw function? They function through ticketing systems. You ticket students. People are happy to pay it. If you go and see your mate play in front of 2,000 people, you'll happily pay a £5. And there's so much potential beyond the music. Like, why not have reusable cups from an environmental perspective? Give cups back, get 10% back per cup. It'd be such a fantastic idea, and everyone could get behind it. All the officer team, all university students, lecturers, teachers, staff, alumni. So, yeah, I don't think funding would be much of an issue. I think everyone would be more than happy to rally behind it.
If I can follow up on that, the problem is, Jake, I mean, like the point has already been made, music festivals is also, for instance, tramlines hasn't been mentioned, but this is a common theme I've noticed in you've been promising things that already exist. For example, mental health committee already exists. We have a welfare committee and we have mental health matters. An SU app, and you mentioned ticketing in your video. We already have an SU app for ticketing. And then you mentioned things like student and student bus fares. Pledged before, some headway was made on this by Dom Trendle multiple years ago, and it's now long been 120. There's no leverage to bring those things back down.
I mean,
so
there's always a leverage. If you want something, you go out there and you try and create positive change. But for me, the point of a presidential position is you see something, students don't like it, and you have to go out there and you have to stand up for what people believe in and change it.
But we know for a fact that Catherine, the welfare officer, lobbied endlessly during the autumn semester of this year to bring the bus fares back down to £1, was unsuccessful in doing so despite having multiple negotiation meetings. And in fact, she decided to focus on the fact that the bus fares were being increased in price for those people travelling further and who had to buy day passes, and therefore affecting mature students and postgrads disproportionately and by a lot more money than simply 20p per fare.
I mean, for me personally, we can focus buying my bus fare all the time. If I'm elected, I'll stick to my promise. I will lobby as many times as possible to try and get a £1 bus fare in. Just because it's done before doesn't mean that you can't lobby again. I want to make that absolutely clear. Second of all, why aren't we talking about my student tram fare? Trams are so expensive in Sheffield.
The student tram fare already exists. If you go to the welcome desk, you can get a day rider ticket for £3.60 over £4.50 as it usually costs.
I mean, for me personally, £3.60 as opposed to £4 simply isn't enough of a discount. I know people who go to Meadowhall, for example.
Sorry. You said at the round tables that a 20p saving would be great, and you've just saved 50p, and apparently you're not happy with it.
I think 20 pence down to £1 is a reasonable saving in terms of economies of scale. I think £4, you should be looking for a £2.50 tram fare. I'm not being funny. If you work a job at Meadowhall,
a saving of 50p is a saving of 50p. It's from a £1.
I also actually think it might be £4.50. I'm correct. I will be gladly corrected if I'm wrong, but I think that
recently went to watch 1975 and I paid £4 for a return of the trams.
If I can add something to that, I would also point out that the trams are run by Stagecoach, and even when Dom Trendle succeeded in keeping the first bus price down to £1, Stagecoach refused and kept their prices up anyway. So we've never had any success at all with Stagecoach over multiple offices. Like you said, this year, officers have been lobbying on it. It's just not doable. We have to focus on things that I understand that you make these promises in good faith, Jake, because you're a good guy.
They aren't
but
promises.
we have to be honest and say that it's just it won't happen.
Do you say they aren't promises?
Okay, but I want to say they aren't promises about getting a tram fare down. The promise is I will go and I will lobby for a tram fare, and I will do that to make sure that it happens. Because when I say something, I always deliver. I don't go out there saying I'm going to get a £1 tram fare, a £1 bus fare rather, and I don't go out there and say I'm going to go and try and do that with the intention of not doing it. All my policies are all tangible, they're all realistic, and they can all happen. I'm going to go out and I'm going to deliver on all of my policies, and I promise all Sheffield students that I will do that. And you can quote me to that right now.
It's just been a suspiciously long time since anybody's actually answered the question. So my policy saves £18,900 and some change, which the rest of the officer team are free to spend on whatever they see as most appropriate.
Could you explain how?
Yeah, so my plan is to cut my own job. If it takes longer than I expect, then as long as I'm able to continue studying, then I'm quite happy to just redonate anything that they have to pay me back into the university. If not, then I'll just cut the job as quickly as I can. Worst case scenario, starting with the end of my term of office, you've saved £18,900 and some change every year for the officers to spend on whatever promises they want to make. If you're watching on camera and you're running for officer next year and you want to spend £18,900 and some change, you should vote for me.
I think we know for a fact that actually leadership is incredibly important. Having been the president for the last few years of one of the newest and now biggest political and campaigning societies on campus, I know for a fact that leadership is what brings a society together, let alone what brings something like the Students' Union requires a figurehead who is not just the figurehead of the Students' Union, but the figurehead of every single student in this university. And so that extends towards the university as well.
Are you saying that the other officers aren't leaders?
I'm not at all, but I think they need somebody that brings them all together and helps increase morale and helps make sure that all of their visions come together and work effectively for every student.
I think top-down structures don't work very well and democratic structures work very well. I think the officer team is perfectly capable of making decisions without somebody there leaning over them.
Is the president's role inherently undemocratic?
The president's role isn't inherently democratic, it is inherently unnecessary.
Okay, thank you very much. to move on from that, Gabe, you have an idea to bring an Amazon locker to the SU. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. Yes.
The SU shop doesn't sell Nestle products, and as we discussed for the SU development officer candidates debate, we don't sell bottled water in single-use plastic bottles. Do you think that the SU? Do you think it's likely that the SU might work with a company such as Amazon?
Well, what's important to remember is the reason we don't sell Nestle products, and the reason we there's also the reason why the Barclays cash machine mysteriously disappeared from Interval about a year ago, is because we have a policy passed on that matter. So we have a policy that says we don't have dealings with Nestle. We have policy that says we don't have dealings with Barclays. We have no such policy with Amazon. Obviously, if the SU Council were to pass a policy which said we will not have any dealings with Amazon, that would naturally present a problem to bringing an Amazon locker here. However, that policy currently doesn't exist. There is an Amazon locker at Sheffield University Students Union, for example.
Do you really think that the council wouldn't pass that policy? Because it might just be that the question's never been raised, because the reason we don't stock Nestle products is that Nestle as a company does some really immoral things, and Amazon as a company also does some really immoral things. Like, it's a nice idea insofar as convenience, but like, you've been around the Students' Union, you're quite aware. I think you probably know that the moment the discussion of an Amazon locker happens, council will almost certainly block it.
Well, if council decides to block it, that is obviously council's choice. However, as I see it right now, I'm operating, within the, I can't see into the future and see what council will do in 6 months. I mean, we'll have a new set of councillors in 6 months. But from where we are now, there is no obstacle that exists right now to having an Amazon locker in the Students' Union. And so I'm operating from that.
There is an obstacle right now to spending £20,000, so you can see into the future on some policies, but not on others.
Well, no, I'm not seeing into the future because we have an NUS white paper that tells us that we're getting a load of money back. Everything I've said is based on, you're talking about a policy that could or could not happen, in terms of whether we'll vote to boycott Amazon or not. Whereas,
Gabe, when it comes to policies that could or could not happen, surely if the premise of £20,000 going to societies is up on a food van rather than generating £5,000 worth of profit, what if that food van completely flops and it raises about £200? Where's the other £4,800 going to come from?
Well, you see, that's very nice that you make that point, but it also completely ignores my third point. Like I say, there is more money we can raise from sponsorship and revenue. We have a team dedicated to increasing that funding every year. The money is there, and in fact, it's already the case that
but if the money's there, then why aren't we using it?
It's already the case that we ran we ran a profit last year, and in addition to that, we're currently changing over. This is actually something I didn't mention before. We're changing over to a new management system for the SU website and so on, which will cost very slightly more for the first 2 years, but then we'll actually save another additional £15,000, into the future.
Are you spending money 3 terms in the future now?
No, that's not what I said.
And is that £15,000 going to fund all the printers in the Ridge and the Edge as well?
Well, I mean, if you ever looked up the cost for 2 printers, it's not very much money. Like, in addition,
think about the demand in Endcliffe and Ramble. There's so many students there. I mean, me personally, I wouldn't go to the Ridge to print off something if there's one printer and there's about 5,000 students waiting to use it.
Well, I mean, I'd rather have a printer in the Ridge if I was living 2 minutes away in Ranmore than going all the way to the IC to print things off.
It comes down to money again, Gabe. You're making so many promises full of money, and I'm yet to see where it's all going to come from.
You're
apart from £15,000 by chance.
But the thing is, you're pledging a music festival.
I'm pledging a music festival that's completely legitimate and it can genuinely happen.
And it's your job to find where the money's coming from. And
I
quite
told
frankly,
you,
you've not said anything.
If you ticket people for events, how do you think Reading and Leeds Fest operate, for example? What do you think they do? They ticket people. What would I do with an SU music festival? I would ticket people.
You've also
people
just said you want to
money.
save people money, though, and that's not going to happen by charging them for something. It's also not going to happen through an internship.
Yeah, I'd be saving people money through my music festival by if they were being environmentally conscious, they'd be giving back cups and they'd be saving 10 pence per cup.
Sorry. I used to work in a coffee shop and I know quite a lot about these environmental cup schemes, and they're really, really good for the environment, but they don't make money. They lose money.
No, but the whole point is surely you would incentivise students to recycle it responsibly rather than just binning it.
I agree, but it wouldn't save money, which is what you're suggesting.
You would save the students individually money because you would give them it works perfectly well at rugby, for example. If you give 10 pence back for people who give cups or pounds, and they make money back, so then that way they're not wasting.
I agree, but you're putting pounds in students' pockets, not pounds in the student union budget.
I'm trying to save students' money.
I think Emily had something to say about this.
Yes, I just wanted to add that we've got on to a topic only of money, and we are no longer discussing the issues, some other issues that maybe affect students just as much. All of my policies are centered around bringing well-being back to the center of the university experience. I think university is an extremely stressful time. I know that's been mentioned in everyone, well, maybe not all of Ashley's, but in the rest of our manifestos. But actually, my policies are the only ones that are feasible and that bridge the gap between the university and the Students' Union. And as we've multiple times all discussed, the Students' Union is not the only space for students at this university. And while
I agree. I think your policies are absolutely great, and I really wish you were running for welfare officer, because I'd vote for you #1 if you were.
I agree. Emily would have made a fantastic welfare officer as well.
But I think welfare is absolutely should be at the centre of every single student's university experience, because people come to university to get a degree.
I agree, but
your welfare
that's
is
not what the
absolutely
president's
fundamental
for.
to that. But actually, I can also run for president because leadership is just as important. And one of my policies is about accountability. Nobody else has mentioned the fact that we really need to make sure we have transparent officers.
That's union development.
What I would make point, I think this is actually really unfair because, you know, the point you make, because you've talked about the role being like irrelevant or whatever, and that you should get rid of it. But when candidates, you know, we've come with visions because we want to, you know, we have causes that we want to follow. So you don't want to have the role, but you also don't want the people running for the role to have any kind of goals or any kind of ideas. I think it's great that welfare is being put at the centre. I think that's really important. I don't understand how that could possibly be used to criticise.
I really love this challenge, actually. It's great. No, I agree. I don't have specific visions with what I want to do with the role. I want to get rid of the role. That's because, in my opinion, the role is unnecessary. I don't think anything that you are proposing as a group is bad. I like all of your policies, some more feasible than others, but I like them all. I just think they can be done without a president. Like, I appreciate that you are all individually running for president, and therefore you want to use this role as a vehicle to do those things. But what's important is that those things get done if they are the right thing for the Students' Union, and they can be done by an officer team that doesn't have a president and by an officer team that has an extra 18,900 and change pounds.
Should we talk about some of the policies on welfare a little bit more specifically? So, Emily, you want to go about sort of reminding people the services that are available and the support that's available. There are all manner of lists out there of the welfare support that's available. How will your list be different?
Yes, so I want to create a comprehensive and accessible list of all wellbeing services that all staff and students can contribute to, because I think they should all be involved in that conversation. At the moment, those lists often aren't in places that people can find, and they're often pages and pages long. And I think it would be really important to have one that's relevant to each department, but also a more generic one. And they would go in the email signatures of all staff. And I'd also encourage departments to put them on the MOLE homepage so that when a student is feeling overwhelmed, they can very easily find that list of services and know exactly where they can go.
This might like just be me, but I find that like MOLE has so much information on it, and there are so many like menu items that sorry, journalism department, I've never actually looked at. In terms of an accessible list, you mentioned their email signatures. How will you like make sure that people can really easily find that list and understand the list and know exactly what help's available and how they can go about getting that help?
So by putting it in the email signatures of all staff, there would literally be a hyperlink to it in those email signatures. Everyone gets hundreds of emails from not just staff, but anyone in the university, and it could be linked in every single email that it's sent out to students. And like every year, the officers run campaigns, and I would run a campaign to recenter wellbeing at the centre of every single student's university experience and make sure they know where those services are and that they are available to them.
It appears that like sort of telling people about the help that's available and that is already there is like a big issue. Jake, you actually want to create a mental health committee. What about mental health matters and welfare committee?
I fully expected this question to go up. To be honest, when I wrote my manifesto, I was thinking about so much because I really wanted to just give Sheffield students the best policies that I possibly can. I probably misworded this. What I want to do really is sort of create more of a forum. So the whole idea is it will give Mental Health Matters, a mental health and welfare committee, more of a platform to stand on. I mean, let's be honest. We've got the Vice Chancellor of the University, we've got the University Health Service, we've got the SU officer team, we've got all these key players, and if all of them came together for a common goal, to come up with ideas for how students can really focus on well-being and mental health and how it can be improved for them. That would be so powerful as a policy, and this is completely feasible. All it takes is some time for people to sit together to discuss what's really at the forefront of students' minds and just to really want to help them.
I think that policy is quite vague, and I actually think that the students of Sheffield University deserve a much more comprehensive mental health policy from a president.
I don't know what's more comprehensive than getting the Vice-Chancellor of the university to say that he really cares about mental health and wants this.
Well, he does.
He
and
does,
also,
and he has
what's worth
meetings with the
pointing
president
out,
very
yes,
often.
you know, like, you've got to remember, Mental Health Matters and Welfare Committee both work closely with the welfare officer and the rest of the team. The team then relays that up to the Vice-Chancellor. These connections that you're talking about,
But why can't we all just
they
sit together?
already exist. Yes, they do sit together. In addition, we literally give the SU gives the Welfare Committee a budget to run events and things like that.
But I
it's a
think they
really
deserve-
good
I think they
idea,
deserve
Jake. I
even
agree
more
with you.
of a voice. They
That's
deserve
why it
more of a
already
voice.
exists.
Not enough has been done. I've spoken to so many students, and they've told me not enough has been done by rights of mental health. I've suffered from mental health issues in the past, and I don't feel like I've ever had the adequate support at university. I really don't, and I feel like so much more could genuinely be done. Whether it's a case of people sitting together in a committee, whether it's a case of asking students literally what do they want, please come and sit, just talk
That's
to me.
exactly what I'm doing. I'm asking everyone to do an open consultation to come up with wellbeing services.
And Emily, I must give you a lot of credit. I do think that your welfare policies are very, very good. I don't have any issue with them. I think
I'm
they're very
hearing
good
a lot
policies.
of things here. I'm hearing things like we need open consultations and we need more comprehensive policies. And one of you even said we need something that's comprehensive and accessible. So how about a comprehensive accessibility strategy where we go out and we talk to liberation groups, where we have open submissions from students, both not anonymous and non-anonymous. We have like one-to-one meetings with students where we can find out their concerns. Then working with those same liberation groups, we can put together, you know, a comprehensive list of, you know, find out where we're going wrong, you know, much wider than just a single policy, and then again working with those groups and uplifting their voices, create a list of solutions. You know, this will cover so many different areas that, like, you know, so I agree that mental health is massively important, and you know, I've suffered with mental health issues as well. I completely empathise with that.
I actually think that's
So
a really big what's called strength of your manifesto. But I must admit, the comprehensive accessibility strategy is a very good policy.
Well, thank you, Jake. And like I said, I mean, this is something, you know, we've been arguing a lot, but I think the one thing that is really important is that we do centre welfare. And like I say, that's why we have to do something really overarching. It has to cover a lot of different areas. It has to understand the nuances in which mental health works. For example, if you talk about trans students, for example, trans students are much more likely to suffer from mental health issues. And part of that comes from the fact that our campus isn't accessible fully to trans students. We have to listen to their concerns and work out how we can accommodate more and make the place more open for them. And
did you specifically mention mental health in your manifesto? Because I couldn't find it in the comprehensive accessibility strategy.
Well, the thing is that accessibility and mental health are inextricably linked. Like, of course, it's, you know, about mental health. I mean, I think it's a bit disingenuous to suggest that I'm, you know, somehow avoiding it when it's very clearly related to that.
No, I don't think you are. I just thought there was quite a lot of jargon in your strategy, and that it didn't necessarily offer some very clear-cut policies that would provide solutions quickly for those issues that we keep saying welfare is centre. And the only candidate that really has put welfare at the absolute centre of their manifesto.
Well, you know, I can give you a detailed description. I can tell you exactly how it will work right now if you want. You know, we'll have
We only have 5 minutes left.
Okay,
so.
Luckily I can do it in 20 seconds. We'll have a
Perfect.
2-stage process. We'll have a consultation and then producing the report. But at the end, once we produce the report, we will produce a set of recommendations. We will then through policy mechanisms and so on at SU Council, we will implement those recommendations. At the end, we'll have a building that's better, staff training will be better, democratic procedures will be more open, and students will be able to feel more welcome in our building. If our building is a safe space, then yes, that will help students' mental health because they know that they will feel safe here in our own SU.
Ashley, did you have something that you wanted to add there?
Yeah, I did. Gabe, you mentioned making the SU more accessible to trans students, like rolling out gender-neutral toilets all over the university would be a really obvious and really great way of doing that. Would you do that?
Yes.
Why is it not in your manifesto?
Well, like I said, I want to look. Obviously, that's something that would fall under. You know, if we're doing a much wider report, and that would obviously be a concern that would come up, and then we would, you know, build solutions on that. You know, I find the question while very important, like a bit odd because I feel like I've kind of already answered it. And that it will be, when we produce this report and we have these recommendations, of course that's something that would, if that's a concern that's raised, and I'm sure it will be, of course that's something
it's a concern that's been raised
on.
for years. I was a student here 8 years ago, and it was being raised when I was a student, and as a trans student, like coming back to Sheffield and seeing that hasn't been that much progress on it, it kind of feels like we don't really need another report to tell us the obvious things, and that you could just commit to do that thing.
Exactly.
Like,
I think that
I'd love that.
That is exactly
Well,
it. The
I'm
report will compile a list of problems and potentially suggest some solutions, but it's not actually going to involve implementing any solutions during your term in
The
office.
report kind of sounds like filibustering for a term.
Well, I mean, I'm sorry you feel that way, but it's simply just not the case. Like, this is about looking at, taking a much more holistic view of liberation and the fact that, while we can make small, things like that are, we should do more. And I will press from that from day one. And I can promise you that we already have, various policies. And, we are, of course, very committed to furthering the rights of LGBT plus people and, trans students in particular. Looking into the nuances of those concerns and going into much more depth and, listening, reaching out to those students and saying, we really want to hear from you and we're willing to give you the space in order to, provide us with, basically what I'm trying to say is by actually providing the impetus ourselves and saying, we want to, we understand that we've not been good enough in the past. It's time for us to change and be better.
We've done this before, and nothing happened.
Well, we haven't. No, there's not on this scale. We haven't. This is something that's far broader.
Sorry. I agree with you that you can upscale anything. Like a lot of the arguments that have been made here have been answered with, well, I'll do that but bigger. You can just do that. You can just make it a hard commitment, put it in your manifesto, and people will like it. You don't have to be vague. You don't have to say, I'll do a report and then we'll get results from the report and then we'll do this. There are very clear things that can be done that you can find out by going to any committee and asking for 10 minutes, and they'll just give you a load of ideas and you can just put them in your manifesto. Like, spending clearly isn't an issue, so why not?
Well, I agree that there are certain things that we can do now, and we should do them now. Obviously, I will support. We have a full officer team. We have the women's officer, who's obviously a dedicated liberation officer, and I would always support their work. In addition, like I said, there are some things we can do now, and for instance, I mentioned before, putting earplugs on the welcome desk, for example. There are some things which we can do now. There are some problems that we have to have a lot broader conversation about in terms of making sure that we've
had a lot of these conversations repeatedly in the past, and we're just going to be having them again and again and again and again.
I think Ashley is making the point that we just need finally we need a presidential candidate to offer some feasible policies that will just happen next year, that will improve the welfare, the well-being, and the general university experience of every single student at the university, and that is what I'm promising to do, and I just don't think the other manifestos offer that.
When it comes to feasibility, I must admit, offering tea and coffee mornings is a great idea, but in 2016-17, the University of Sheffield had 28,715 students. How are you actually going to feasibly give people
So tea and coffee would be during exams only, so that's 6 weeks of the year. It would be for a couple of hours every day.
We have 2 exam
Yeah,
periods.
so that's 3 plus 3. So so 6 weeks, 6 weeks of the year.
The music festival's fine, but tea and
so the
coffee's
music
a
festival is
step
fine,
too
but a couple of tea bags and some hot water is not.
Would you sit there with 28,000 cups of tea waiting for people? How do you decide who gets his?
You don't have to make all the cups of tea in advance.
Yeah,
like, how big would that kettle have to be?
They'd get a bit cold.
I do think what is a more serious point though is that well, obviously there's logistics things in terms of where would be I don't want to get too involved in the specifics of how we're going to distribute large amounts of tea. I think in general it's just kind of lacking ambition in some ways. Like, while tea is great and I like tea, it's not exactly transformative.
But having 2 printers is?
Well, I mean, because that's the only thing on my manifesto. Like, in addition to that,
well, that's not the only thing on my manifesto.
you also have, for example, the same thing. The same was true of the officer accountability, which is, there's already accountability, for example, at council. It would be very easy to publish those things online. In some cases, it already is published online.
I don't think that's true too. I don't think that's true at all. I don't think that we do know what our officers do, and that's not for lack of them working extremely hard. I think the majority of the student body wouldn't engage with things like SU Council. I think it's really important that we're able to hold them to account via really quick social media bulletins or monthly drop-ins or whatever we like, just to make sure that everyone does know what's going on because it's their SU.
Gabe, do you feel like the presidents should always be super accountable to the SU?
Yes.
Do you think the presidential candidate should be held accountable to the SU?
I'm really sorry, but we are running out of time.
Oh no.
I'm very sorry, but thank you very much. So that is it for night one of Forge Debates for the 2019 SU elections. Thank you very much for watching. We're going to go back for some punditry with Ewan and the pundits in the studio. Cheers.
Goodness me, what's that I can hear? I think it's the fire alarm, because it was so hot, that debate. My goodness. Thanks a lot, thanks a lot, Cameron, for that. Really interesting, and just as spicy and feisty as we thought it would be. Back in the punditry here, and we're not going to let them get away with anything, because our fact checkers are on the case. Hi, Yash and Georgia. How are you?
We're doing good.
Great.
Just recovering after that.
Yeah. I'm still recovering. Give me a sec.
So, quick fire first of all.
Yeah.
Favourite candidate from that?
I'll go first.
You can go first.
I really liked Emily. She was really well spoken. And that, let me be honest, but she really challenged the other candidates. The way she shot back, her quick remarks, I was really impressed, and it really drilled the other candidates as well. It even put some of them on their spot. So I thought it was really interesting.
She wasn't let them get away with anything.
Yeah, she was like, nope, you have to do this, and I was like, I was really proper impressed, because from there I got to know each candidate, and they had to explain themselves in their manifesto. So I was really impressed with that.
What about you, Georgia?
I thought Gabe's policies, although very ambitious, he was really well spoken. Honestly, did his research, knew what he was talking about, was bringing up facts upon facts, was firing back. So no matter what was challenged, at least he can say that he sort of knew what he was going to say. He didn't ever go like he knew exactly what to fire back with.
I feel like university security can blame the fire alarm on Gabe there.
Yeah.
To be honest. So, talking about the key clashes in the debate, now money was a key clash, wasn't it? And Ashley, they really did come under fire for that. Abolish the president. Is the president unnecessary? What do you think? Tell us at home on social media. It's at Forge Press and at Forge TV on Twitter. But what do you think? Is the president unnecessary?
I don't think it is unnecessary. It sort of brings together all the officers, and I think that is a extremely important role that, although there's things going on behind the scenes that we don't all see. So to say that officers all equally have a very important role, but the president obviously oversees that, and I think some of the policies that were brought up.
And also, like, if you think about it, yes, we need someone to oversee them. I agree, but also if you think about it, what if the officers have clashes? The president will be the mediator for these officers. They will be the ones who'll be able to step in, because since they're overseeing everyone, they'll know who is doing what.
They're also the ones to like represent the student union. Exactly, so in terms of media, things like that, I feel like that role is definitely important in that sense.
And I feel like, considering one of the main incentives, according to Ashley, for the president being abolished is the redistribution of the salary. You know, one of the things he said is, you know, to those of you watching, you know, second years or whatever, who are maybe thinking of running for a role next year, you're going to have a bigger salary. Well, I'm sorry, but 19.5 grand coming straight out of uni is pretty high anyway. You know, it's not
it
just...
It is really decent for a student who's just coming out as fresh graduates. I think it's pretty decent already. What do you think?
Just I don't really see what sort of a benefit it benefits the students. That's what the president role is for. So money redistributed, great, but it doesn't really benefit the students that much in that sense.
Perhaps, you know, I know there's obviously a challenge to be different, but perhaps a little bit attention seeking from Ashley there, as someone said earlier to me. Not my opinion. But anyway, moving on to another clash. So the music festival, the Sheffield SU Music Festival. Now, Jake got challenged on this. Have you heard about Platform Festival?
I was a bit. I mean, he just, as he said, like as Emily and Gabe mentioned earlier. Did he not see the Facebook post on Platform? I'm sorry, it's going everywhere. It's going viral. Platform is SU
it's a fantastic
music festival. It showcases everything. And what exactly was his intention when he put that in on his manifesto? Was he just trying to gain more votes, or I'm still quite trying to understand.
He brought it up saying that not everyone's interested in societies and things like that, which I do understand, but there are plenty of things available. That's why they have like Give It a Goes and things like that. And the festival, albeit it is a good idea, it's a good idea that's already implemented. I don't think it can stand as one of the main points on your manifesto.
That's true
in
as
that
well.
sense.
And that brings back money. And also another point that was raised, like festival like tram lines, like that already exists as well. So,
and talking about trams, tram fares is smooth. Tram fares
that
are
already
another one of another one of Jake's policies. We're
sorry.
ripping to pieces here.
I mean, okay, to be fair, it's not really advertised. You actually have to go and ask. It's not exactly advertised. Not many people know about it, but it exists and it is discounted. It's not the usual £4 that you pay on trams.
I feel like if that's something you wanted to talk
Yeah.
about, then you should make it more. Because I personally, I did not know that was a thing.
No.
Why was I paying more to
Yeah.
go on the tram? When
No,
it was
same.
Yeah.
I feel mugged.
I feel mugged off. So I can see maybe make more awareness of this. But
yeah, that
there
makes
are
more
student
sense.
discounts.
Yeah, but there are already student discounts.
Same with the bus fare.
Same with the bus
Yeah,
fare.
I was gonna.
Yeah, the bus fare is an interesting one because I've actually I've written a story before for press about this, and part of it was contacting Stagecoach and First about why they were reducing the fares, and they were increasing the fares, and they were very adamant that it was the right thing to do, and gave me this very complicated reasoning that, to be honest, didn't make sense about why they were doing it. But I really don't think that it's achievable. Do you to reduce it again from £1.20? I feel like it's only going to go up to £1.30.
No, I think it's going to go up. Like if they've already
Brexit
they've already increased it. Why would they decrease it again?
Yeah.
Like what? What's their reason for it?
Personally, I don't.
Exactly.
It's not that. It's just, I don't really see the benefit. We already get a large discount for a student ticket. Like
For a
£1.20 off the original is a lot. So the 20p difference, in my opinion, is not a big of a deal to me.
Yeah, and no, clearly for some of the candidates as well. But there were some more positive moments in the debate, wasn't there? When, especially Jake and Gabe and Emily, they did actually compliment each other's policies a lot of the time.
Actually,
and particularly Gabe's approach to mental health. Now we've spoken about mental health a lot tonight, and obviously Emily's coming into the presidential role with a complete agenda of well-being, which she was criticised for, maybe going for the welfare officer. But it's fine to have an agenda. But Gabe's comprehensive strategy was actually, Jake thought it was a good idea.
Well, I thought I was actually focused on Emily's. I like the signature idea on the emails because, albeit I do find that it might just be personally me, but I feel like mental health is very talked about in this SU, and I feel it is well known of places to go. But I feel like the added email signature is just the extra length and makes it a lot easier for students to find help. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And any last comments on that debate? Any surprises for you that stood out?
Not really. Just like some of them had things in their manifestos which I felt like could have been better researched, like Gabe's policy on printers at the Ridge.
Yeah, printers at the Ridge.
Now we already have printers at the Ridge, so I thought some of them.
Ruthless, aren't we?
No, but it is the truth. We've already checked, so I just thought that But I thought overall today's debates were amazing. Just. You were right. There's a fire alarm. I'm sorry. It was just amazing.
It was incredible, and for you,
fantastic
Georgia.
as well. Especially that last debate. There was
heat,
very heat in that.
Heat. Well, thanks so much, guys, for that fact checking, that almost absolute merciless ripping there. But no, thanks so much for joining us here on Forge TV. It's been a pleasure to have you. Don't forget you can watch back the live stream on YouTube, and we do it all again tomorrow night. Tomorrow night we've got 4 more officers going, 4 more candidates for the officer roles going under the grill. A particularly interesting one will be the welfare officer and the education officers. So do stay with us and join us again at 6:30 p.m. tomorrow night. But for now, thanks so much for watching and goodbye.